All right, I'd like to call the August meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order, and I'd like to go over the procedure that's on the back of the front page of your agenda. The chairman will announce each case and ask interested parties to indicate their presence by raising their hand. Commissioners will discuss details of the case, calling on staff for details. Following this discussion, commissioners may choose to ask questions of parties present. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between the applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time to introduce themselves by name and address and to present their position as succinctly as possible. The Commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on an application, the Commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the Commission determines that circumstances have changed. Or deny the proposal without prejudice, which means the applicant may reapply at any time. When an application has been approved and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued. Contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. And finally, any person aggrieved by any decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the Commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the BOA. Oh, okay, and I'm sorry, I skipped. No, on to the roll call. I did skip that. Sorry.
Alan Brown.
Present.
Neela Crank-Clements.
Present.
Suzanne Broadbent. Taylor Fudge.
Present.
Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Klaus Raman Phillip.
Present.
Linda Schultz.
Present.
Ann Zacharitz. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on to from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay, all right, short and sweet. 3, acceptance of the minutes of the previous meeting from July 3rd. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes? It's a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Klaus Raman Phillip and seconded by Joe Meacham. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted. And on to code enforcement report. Anything on that? Katie, any from the city or I'd like to comment?
I don't think we have anyone here to speak on this. Just as always, this records any properties that have been issued a notice of violation or that have progressed to a citation. Those citation numbers will be listed in the far right column, and you can get more information about any of these cases from our staff or from code enforcement staff or the Action Center.
Okay, no questions from anybody up there? All right. Continuance, announcements, and requests. Looks like none.
No new requests.
Okay. Public hearings. None. Consent docket.
We have 2 items on the consent docket. We've had a request from the public to pull 19-105 from the consent docket for discussion.
Okay, which would be C2.
C2.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to pull that, or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can remember.
Yeah. So I'll move to pull Hpca 19-00105 from the consent docket.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Neela Crank-Clements, a second by Linda Schultz. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, C2 has been removed consent docket, so now the one remaining item. Motion for approval?
I move to approve the consent docket.
I'll second.
What's that?
Except for the item pulled.
Except for the item pulled.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Neela Crank-Clements and seconded by Klaus Ryman Phillips. Lots of names here. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent docket is approved. On to individuals, so I guess we go to C2 first. Yeah. Katie?
Okay. HPCA 19-105 at 201 Northwest 20th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Catherine Montgomery, Preservation and Design Studio, PLLC, for Miles Mixon, Revive Design Build, for Certificate of Appropriateness to 1, demolish garage, Elective, 2, reconstruct front porch floor and wall, Elective, 3, reconstruct porch roof and ceiling, Elective, and 4, reconstruct garage, Elective.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay.
And the request to pull it was from the Heritage Hills Design Review, Preservation Design Review Committee, and largely was concerned with the garage addition to the side of the house, and that it may not be appropriate to put this structure back.
Okay.
Is someone here from the committee that's planning to speak on this? Yes.
They might want to come up. Shannon?
I think staff recommended that it be on the consent docket and it be approved, so really, I'd prefer to hear from someone opposing it first, and then we can go back to the applicant.
So Shannon?
That's okay?
Yeah. Shannon, you want to speak first?
Shannon Rundle, 431 Northwest 20th, member of Heritage Hills Preservation Review Committee. Sorry Randy isn't here. He's better a speaker than I am. We don't oppose the project. We love the project, and we are extremely excited that Miles and Zeb are doing this project. It has been one of the ones that for a long time we've needed help with this house. The issue that came up was really from, I will say, from Randy Ice, who knows, as you all know, he knows the original plats. He knows how things were laid out originally. This garage is obviously from the inside not an original structure, although it was put on years and years ago. So it's over 50 years old, if that matters. But it looks like on the drawings and everything that it sits right on the property line. And one question we had is there a survey of the property, because it wouldn't be honoring a setback, I think, that now is in effect. And Katie, you might need to, but isn't it 3 feet on the side, a setback now?
So, yeah, for a new structure, they have to be 3 feet off the side, or else it has to have a fire-rated wall. Although in HP, when you're building back, for instance, we approve detached garages to be built back all the time that don't meet that requirement. And
Yeah.
as long as it's going back on the historic footprint, plan review will approve those building permits as long as it's fire-rated.
Okay. Okay, so really, it's not necessarily relevant that it could be on the property line.
Right,
I mean,
it's
yeah.
because it is a previously
Yeah, okay.
historic feature,
Yeah.
it's considered
Right.
grandfathered.
Okay, that was really just a question that came up in our committee. The other question is, there is an existing garage on the property. And there's a curb cut on Robinson and a driveway that goes into the backyard of the house, and it's a one-car structure with a garage apartment. And so it looks to be very old. The curb cut on Robinson actually has the indentions in it that were really old, like at the Overholser Mansion for the carriages to go over. So it's a very old driveway on Robinson, we think. We were also curious that why we're going to have, I guess, 2 garages in 2 separate places, and if you all were really aware of that and aware of the curb cut on Robinson. So it was really just questions from us, but we thought that we should voice our questions.
Well, I have a question too, and I really don't
I
have a
think
question.
we thought that the porch part could be approved, and maybe that, and probably the demolition could be approved, but continue just that garage part to maybe find out. But if Katie says it's okay that it's on the property line, then I don't know that there's any reason not to go with staff recommendation.
Yeah.
And we can just talk to the, investors about the garages and see what their further plan is, because there just wasn't anything, I don't think, in the application about that original garage, right?
At this time, there's no consideration for other garage, the detached garage.
Right, yeah, that's what I meant, although it is probably not in very good shape either, but, yeah. Anyway, I think this is all more just for information and for our information and yours, so.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like some clarification on what the staff said about
Right.
historic. Because you said, did you say that this garage is historic? Is that what you're basing?
Yes, so this
So it's
garage...
10 years old and that's historic?
No, the garage to the side of the house is shown on the Sanborn maps as far back as 1922. We have a 1919 Sanborn map where the garage is not shown, so we presume it was built sometime between 1919 and 1922, which makes it close to 100 years old.
Okay.
So even though it wasn't original to the construction of the house, we know that at one point the house didn't
That it
have
is historic. Okay,
It's-
thank
yeah.
you.
Okay, any more questions for the applicant? I think staff's recommending approval.
If the,
Good getting a clarification on the
do we
history.
feel like the neighborhood is satisfied?
Sounds like they,
So do we need to make a motion to approve? Okay.
If you want
I'd
to.
make a motion to approve HPCA 19-00105 with the specific findings and the condition listed on the staff report. The condition being, okay, just one condition, that in the event that the demolition of the existing garage provides evidence of a previous roof configuration, the applicant will contact staff to determine whether a revision is necessary. Does the applicant accept that condition?
Yes, we're currently seeking historic photographs, and as we dismantle the existing structure, we may be able to tell.
Okay.
okay.
I second that.
Moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Elo Craig Clements. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The item is approved with condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to D4 now, right?
HPCA 18...
Did we pull D4?
No, that's right. We spoke before the meeting. We have an item on which one commission member was going to have to recuse, and because we have some folks that have to leave at a certain time, we wanted to pull D4, HPCA 19-73 to the top of the agenda, so we make sure we don't lose quorum on that item.
We need to make a motion to pull that? Okay, so moved.
Second, anybody?
Second?
Moved by Elo Craig Clements, seconded by Klaus Rahmen Felt. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll pull D4 up to the front.
Okay.
And I'm that commissioner who needs to recuse himself, so I will be...
Okay, thank you.
HPCA 19-73 at 1000 Northwest 18th Street, Mestic Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Lauren Bernhardt, Omega Investments, for Patrick Crump for a certificate of appropriateness to, 1, install wood windows.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay.
Hi.
Introduce yourself and sign in, please.
My name is Lauren Bernhardt,
And address?
1000 Northwest 18th Street.
Okay. And sign in.
Okay.
Sorry, if we need to have a record.
Sorry, I'm new.
And everything's recorded, so.
So this proposal is to install a window in the former location of a door. The door was removed when an exterior staircase was removed and just covered over with siding, but they'd like to add more light to the interior, so they proposed to put a window back in that spot. Staff's recommended a continuance because the window, as illustrated, is shown as one kind of solid fixed window with divided light instead of a double hung window, or at least a fixed window that approximates the look of a double hung window,
We
at
were
least from the drawing.
Open to suggestion. They didn't want it to function because it's a stairwell on the inside, so there's no need for fire.
Right.
It's inside, the window is about 10 feet above your
Right.
where you stand, so they didn't want it to open, and the homeowners wanted to save cost that way by not having two sashes. So
Are all those other windows double hung?
Yes.
they're vinyl.
They're vinyl, but
Yeah, yes, they are.
They're
yeah.
operable?
Say that again?
They're operable.
Yes. They're in bedrooms.
On both sides, okay.
Yes, both of those are bedrooms.
So you said you're open to suggestions. Would the applicant be amenable to installing a fixed window that appears to be double hung?
Yes, they'd be open to that, yeah.
Okay.
How would you do that?
Yeah,
They would nail it shut. It would be two sashes, I guess, that never functioned. There'd be none of the mechanics that operated the window.
So it's a double hung window that just doesn't open.
Yeah, which it never would because,
So in addition, the true divided light, what was it says, but staff also said that being a true divided light wood window would be appropriate.
yes, it would be true divided light.
True divided.
Yes, it would.
True divided wood window.
Yes. We would have.
Wood, not vinyl.
Not vinyl. It would be wood, yeah.
with clear glass.
Yes. No seated glass or anything, yeah.
We're kind of trying to get around to the...
No stained glass. Oh, yeah, because it's sterile. No stained glass or anything like that. Clear glass.
Complies with, right,
So I guess the condition is that they submit that
Yes.
information?
yes. So can you...
What else do you need?
That?
Sorry, so what do you need? You need it to say that it's clear light? Or clear glass, sorry?
We would just need you to resubmit to staff. So our condition would be for you to resubmit your specifications for the windows to staff, and once they approved it, then they could go forward with the process.
So we could approve it with the condition that you're agreeing to everything you've just agreed to.
You want it to
And
be
then
two sashes that can be fixed, though?
Yes.
So resubmit that.
It
It
doesn't,
needs to be true divided
it
light.
needs to be a double hung type window. It can operate. You can just lock it or whatever.
Right.
But you need to submit all this information to staff for approval.
Okay. The reason the homeowners are interested in saving cost, since they were never going to open it, that's why we proposed this kind of more not typical.
cost
We
an
don't need to
additional
know
$50.
what the mechanics are that are or are not inside the wall. It would just be a matter of getting a drawing from your window supplier that shows that it's going to be two sash, one forward of the other.
Okay.
They can be fixed. They can be installed so that they're
Okay.
fixed.
So as long as it's two sashes?
Yep.
Okay.
And you agreed to all that, so the condition is that you submit that, and they approve it before you get the CA.
Okay. Thank you.
So you want to go ahead with something on that?
So I move to approve HPCA 19-00073 to install a window with the condition that the proposed window location was possibly a window historically, and with the conditions that it be true divided light, wood window, double hung. Does anyone have any other conditions? Did I catch everything?
Clear glass.
Clear glass, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, that's my motion.
Second.
Been moved by Neil Clem, second by Linda Schultz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's approved with conditions. Next item. Oh, let's get class back.
Okay, go back to number 1, D1, HPCA 18-184 at 904 Northwest 37th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Mary and Joel Lopez for certificate of appropriateness to 4 construct garage, elective.
Okay, applicant present? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Farmer. I'm the designer. The Lopez family actually had a funeral of a family member today. So
1 second.
We don't have a quorum right now.
We're waiting for Klaus and Neela to come back. Sorry. Here they are. And you need to state your name and address and sign in, please.
Okay, I'm signed in. My name is Tim Farmer.
Okay.
The address is 904 Northwest 37th Street project. The Lopez family had a family member that passed and they could not be here. I'm the designer on the project. So hopefully I can answer any questions you have.
Okay. What's this one?
What is the existing roof pitch, the roof pitch on the existing garage?
The existing garage was probably a 2 to 3 pitch. It's I'm sorry, it's wrong project. That pitch is a 5 pitch.
A 512?
Five.
And you're requesting to do a 1212?
Yes.
Seems very steep.
It is, the owners would like to have storage up top, is what it amounts to, over the garage. And So we've got stairs that would go there and just have some room up there for storage, that type of thing.
I understand the desire for storage. I think the roof pitch is kind of inappropriate to the house, and really 12-12 pitch is not historic. So I personally think that's not a justification for the roof pitch.
I agree. I mean, we're not concerned with what's going on inside the house. Our purview is what's on the exterior, and a 12-12 is not a historic pitch.
If you'll actually back out and look at the pitch on the house, it's got a 12-12.
It does on those front dormers.
Yeah, and the side also.
Yeah.
It's got it's got the same pitch.
The back of the house, though, it looks like it's more like a...
And the garage did not have that pitch.
Yeah, the garage did not have that pitch, but the house has a 12.
Typically, the front part of the house will have a steeper pitch, especially some of the,
Right.
particular styles, but the back of the house will have a lower pitch.
This one has, this one is kind of unusual in that it's got, I don't know if we have a good picture of that, but it's actually 12.
On the front, but not on the back, I don't think.
I believe it is, and I'm not sure if we have a side shot of that or not, but that's where we derived that from.
I thought I saw a
Yeah,
photograph.
see, it's pretty much just a standard. I know what you're saying, that it's maybe even steeper on the very front, but the back is 12, so.
Yeah. Well, usually the garages are less, imposing than the house.
Right.
My thing is that the historic garage is more appropriate form, roof pitch. Anybody else? I'm looking at you, Joe.
I agree with that, and also I think the comments from staff on windows on the east side and also the window at the top, the two windows in the gable ends, I think, they're just not consistent with what would be in the area, and then I think it would benefit too with a window on the east, just having that flat side, I think is.
Yeah, that side you could see from the yard, so, yeah. We don't have a problem with that at all.
So what is your thought on changing the pitch of the roof?
What pitch do you think would be appropriate for that?
Maybe an
we always like to
8-12,
see things go back to what they were.
6-12.
612, you said 512 right now? It's pretty flat.
It's approximately, it may be a 6. I can't remember if.
6.
That looks more like at least a 6, maybe 8 to me.
Yeah,
But
so if we just match, the structure's still there, we can match that pitch if that's what's required.
you get a little storage up there, but not anything you could really use.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what we would prefer.
Okay.
So back to the setback on a new garage. This one is, I think, 2 foot 6 inches. Is 3 feet required?
If you have a window.
It's a new construction, right? So
Well, it's replacing a historic garage, so it's going back in the approximate
point.
location of the,
Yeah.
existing garage. And generally, what I've seen happen with applicants, once they get a CA from us and then they go to plan review, if they're too close to that property line, they'll come back and either have to fire rate it, or if it's actually if the eaves are actually overhanging the property line, they'll ask them to
Right.
scoot it over.
And we're going to build with no eaves, just like this one.
Yeah, the west, if it's 30 inches away from the property line, you can't have windows on the west.
Right, and it's actually right on the line right now, so we just wanted to have some room to,
If you move it 33 feet from the property line, you can have a window.
okay.
That's
Well, it's just-
that's the code. It has to be a firewall, and a firewall can't have windows in it.
Right.
So,
So whatever you prefer, we will do that.
okay. Did you want to put a window in?
We hadn't recommended windows on that side. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
going to be, you're not going to get much light.
No, and it's
A little
west.
space off the fence, and
So you could
it's not
build
gonna
it.
be visible.
You could build it 30 inches if there's no window. By fire rating, it just means there's a sheetrock on the inside,
Right.
basically.
And usually with these with locations for garages and that sort of thing, when it comes to how close it is to the property line, that's something that we kind of leave up to plan review and the building code reviewers to evaluate. If it needs to come back to us because they're going to have to move it over, then either we can administratively approve it as a revision if it's just a matter of 6 inches, a foot, whatever, or if it's going to be a bigger change than that, we'll bring it back to the commission for review.
We were just trying to keep it off the line, but as close to the original drive as possible. So
I don't have a problem with the 2'6". If you moved it 6 inches, you wouldn't have to worry about firewalls. So,
That's right.
That's
right.
Okay.
Might be an option for you.
Sure.
I would do it if I was build it. Okay. Anything else on this one?
Comments on there were several comments about the windows. Are there specific changes we want to see, or is this something you want to continue and have them address the windows and come back?
If you're going to match the existing pitch, would you put windows in it still? Or?
No.
Okay.
No, you couldn't put a window in that.
So really, if we're okay with him modifying the pitch and we're okay with the garage location, I think we could approve it with conditions.
It would just be the east window. Are you all,
Right.
the staff,
Oh, the east.
staff recommending a window on the east side?
The garage, the current existing garage doesn't have any windows on the side, so it faces into the yard. I think typically on something that big, we would likely see a window, but I don't think it's a deal breaker for staff.
So are we going to continue? I'll make a motion to continue it if that's where we are.
Do we need to continue it or approve it with conditions?
They can resubmit to staff.
Yeah.
Just want to point out, it is slightly larger than the existing garage. Square footage?
Smaller than the existing, but,
Existing says it is 648, and the new one says it's 660
oh, I thought
on page 9 of 51.
Yeah, I think our staff report got those flipped.
Yeah,
I was going to say, it
I meant to
says
point
that
that out.
it's
Yeah.
smaller.
slightly larger. It's 12 square feet larger.
This garage is really long here, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
It is, yeah. This is a much more usable garage.
How does that additional 12 square feet stack up to our guideline of, I don't remember what number that is, but the guideline that talks about the size?
The guideline talks about 450
Yeah.
square feet or 5% of the lot, whichever of the two is larger, or as big as the historic garage was. Then it allows for the commission to consider things like the visibility of the garage, compatibility with surrounding garages. Something we often look at is whether or not you're going to be able to tell from the street that it's larger than what was allowed. If the front elevation is an appropriate width, if it's not projecting much deeper into the yard than other surrounding garages. Those have all been factors we've considered in approving a larger garage.
What's the justification for enlarging it a little bit?
Just to be able to get modern vehicles in with 2 8-foot doors.
Yeah, the front width, yeah, that makes sense. The depth, if you reduced it 6 inches, you'd be about the same as the existing garage
and
size.
Whatever
What do you guys
whatever you
think?
ask, we'll do.
Yeah.
Stick with the guideline.
Yeah.
So that would save 11 and a half square feet. That's pretty close.
Okay, so we'll reduce it 6 inches in depth.
That's what I,
Katie, did you say your figures were,
We've flipped the numbers, yeah.
okay.
okay?
All right, so I guess we can make a motion to approve HPCA 1800184 with the specific findings as though in the staff report and the condition that the applicant resubmit a revised plan that shows the roof pitch to match the existing garage and to reduce the depth by 6 inches.
I'll second that if we can remove specific finding number 4, because that was a mistake.
Okay.
The new garage is actually tiny, tiny bit larger now, even with the 6-inch
12 square
reduction.
feet. What about the window?
And the window.
Yeah, and yeah.
In the window. Okay. So could we state what we're asking for from me?
So I have approved
So
approved with conditions with specific findings from the staff report, except for
Number 4.
except for number 4, which addresses the size of the garage, with the condition that the roof pitch be changed to match that on the historic garage, that the windows and the gable ends be removed, and that the depth be reduced by 6 inches.
Okay,
I've seconded.
okay. Does staff need to review and approve these changes, I guess?
Yep,
Okay.
that all of that needs to be, the revised drawings will need to come to staff.
Okay. So it's been moved by
Klaus.
Klaus Ron Phillip, seconded by Nilo Crank Clement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're approved with
Thank you.
modifications, and thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hpca 19-29 at 600 Northwest 17th, Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Pat Salome for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace retaining wall required, and 2, replace yard steps required.
Okay, you're not the applicant. Is the applicant present? Okay.
The applicant is present. She's contacted us since the process began.
Holly, I
You're
think
the
you're,
architect.
are you on the wrong case? Are we on number 29?
No, Pat's contacted my office.
Okay,
We just
okay,
weren't
I
the
saw you were
applicant at
next,
the-
too, okay.
At the time, so I'll be speaking on her behalf. But Ms. Salome is here today, if you
Okay.
guys have any direct
So
questions.
you're representing her.
Yes, please.
All right.
So
Because
this
we know who
was,
you are.
this was heard previously and continued. The main concern with it was the portions of the retaining wall that go along either side of the steps that previously had the concrete curbs to them that were sloped and were replaced with the stone retaining wall at kind of up at the level of the yard. At the previous meeting, the commission identified those as pretty typical historic features and thought those should be put back as they were.
And,
Continued for more
in the
information.
confusion when you came up, did you state your name and address?
Oh, Holly Hunt with Sam Gresham Architects, 400 Northwest 23rd.
Okay, great, thank you. For the record, so it's recording, or
Of course.
if you get mad at me. Okay. All right, sorry, interrupt.
So specifically, it's the concrete cheek walls on either side. Just to kind of give you a little background from what Ms. Salome's told me, this began as just a regular maintenance type thing. The wall was really bad in some areas, and so she had hired a crew that had redone a retaining wall down the street, again, as a maintenance type thing. She wasn't rebuilding the wall. And as they started to pull these pieces out, of course, it just all began to crumble. And so that's what happened is, that existing condition was kind of lost during some of that removal. But it's reassembled with all the same stone. But I guess those contractors that, looked at several other examples down the street found that to be the condition most often seen. And so that's how they rebuilt it back. I've looked at it. I've looked all the way up and down the streets. And you see examples of both. Here in this situation, I think, that the crew did a really great job salvaging all that existing stone. That's that old sandstone, so it's very brittle. And I was really pleased that they were able to salvage so much of it and put it back the way it was. So obviously, I understand that the problem is that retaining wall is higher than the ground it's retaining to the sides. And that is a condition that we often see, though, that those retaining walls terminate at the same height as the concrete landing behind. So, I think this is a combination of a little bit of miscommunication on that crew's part. But for us at this junction, since it's been constructed, is, would the cheek walls going back, would that just be, some pastiche version of the past? It's no longer historic. And now we would just be doubling up two retaining walls side by side. And so I guess what we're hoping to do and working, obviously we couldn't submit anything today new to review, but I just really wanted to get some feedback on, what our options are for getting this closer to the original without completely tearing up the entire stair. I don't know that the stone would withstand another removal in that way. Thoughts?
I mean,
So that's what it used to look like right there.
even when we discussed last time, I don't really I mean, I understand there's a difference, but now that Holly's explained the circumstances, I feel like it is kind of one of those circumstances where there was no intent to rebuild the wall and redo it different. I think that knowing that, the applicant probably would have come in and submitted something if they were going to, if they had that in mind. That would be my guess. And it just kind of happened. That's what I hear Holly saying. So I feel like it's close. I would hate to disturb the historic material once again. I'm not really, unless somebody has a way that they could make that happen. I think that
So we're talking about shortening those cheek walls back like they were?
I mean, and then the concrete and everything, I mean, personally, I think that maybe it's unfortunate that it happened that way, but I don't feel like, I personally don't think that making the applicant go forward with another fix on the stairs is necessary. That's my...
So the sidewalk and the steps were all replaced at the same time?
Correct. And this all happened in about a day while the homeowner was at work. So it happened quickly.
But it's the homeowner's responsibility, living in an HP district, so I just, yeah.
Well, again, directly across the street, across 17th, we see this exact same condition, but with brick. So again, and next door, like, well, not next door, a couple doors down, similar condition. So, I mean, I think ultimately the whole intent was to repair an existing brick or stone retaining wall to the likeness of the neighborhood, and that's what we see here. It's just not the exact same way it was prior to that restoration.
So the steps are new, is that correct?
Correct.
And the sidewalk.
Correct.
And
all the stone is original,
the
just put back
steps are new.
Right.
Is there an issue with the concrete color, Katie?
It's hard to tell. I haven't gone by and looked at this lately. In that picture, it looks like it's a different tone or shade than the sidewalk. It looks brighter. Usually give people some time for the concrete to kind of
settle in,
yeah, and get a little weathered.
I will tell you that the city replaced all these sidewalks along this entire corner within the last 6 months. So the concrete in front of it is also very new. So just if that is any consideration. But yes, I think it's already much darker than this color here.
So the original sidewalk steps had steps with a concrete, they called it a cheek wall, I guess.
Correct.
On the side. It had that. Then it had the stone retaining wall that turned in.
Right. They basically were just side by side, as you can see in that picture. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that basically took all that away, including the historic concrete cheek wall. I'm sorry, it's a new current term. I hadn't heard that. And then made it so the steps died right into the stone wall. So it's quite a bit different, really.
It is.
Yeah. It's more than just the walls are taller than they were before. They actually are the sides of the steps.
I kind of agree with Mary Jo, though. I mean, as a whole, I think if you look at the original photographs and new photographs, you know, they took pains to use existing sandstone. And frankly, I mean, I think it looks pretty great. The stairs are slightly different, but I don't know if it necessarily is detrimental to the, you know, historical character of the house or the neighborhood. And I mean, there's all kinds of different stair configurations. And I've definitely seen the kind of brick condition that you're talking about where you might have kind of like a little, you know, like a little gateway or something. I don't know what you want to call it, you know, like little pillars or something.
Correct.
You know, there are different configurations like that. So I'm not sure. I appreciate that you use the original sandstone, and I could see if you start trying to, you know, jackhammer that out or bust it out with a, you know, sledgehammer. I mean, it'd be tough to, you'd have to knock it out and try to rebuild it. And,
It's just concrete.
so, well, the stone.
The
I'm talking about the
stone wouldn't survive.
Well, stone could, yeah.
The stone was the home in her eyes, like the most important quality of the retaining wall. And you know, yeah, the concrete, whether concrete's poured 30 years ago or today, you know, it's still concrete. That stone has been there for nearly 100 years.
Of course, it could have all been avoided in the very beginning. if
Here we are.
either the contractor or the homeowner had followed the application process. And I'm torn about that, really.
Yeah, me too.
Because I think that the more contractors that come into the preservation districts and think that this is something that works, the more we do damage to what we're trying to do. So I'm really torn about it.
I can understand that concern. I certainly want you all to know that that was never the intention.
And it's not our intention to punish the homeowner. I mean, I certainly don't want anyone to think that. But, you know, this case was brought before us, and we said we wanted those cheek walls back. They were not put back. And now it's like the burden is on us. And
Well, and again, by the time...
it just wouldn't have been approved before.
By the time it was brought to the attention that it would actually require a CA, it was already finished. So, yeah, we are at that... we agree, this is not a good situation.
Is the sidewalk the same width? It looks like it is. It's tying into those joints at the
Yes.
bottom, so yeah.
It's a steep corner.
So the cheek wall was actually on the outside of those steps. Is that correct? There it is.
Yeah,
Existing.
you see it there?
No, it's on the inside. So the steps actually are wider and the sidewalk. So that's another issue.
I mean, if you're concerned about the main concern is about the cheek wall.
So the sidewalk's also wider than it was, and the steps themselves.
Well, and if we were supposed to review this like it had been brought to us before it was ever done, and so, you know, when you're trying to do that and be reasonable and understand, you know,
Certainly.
we all have houses too. It's just more of a challenge to really line that up with what the guidelines ask us to do.
Right.
I understand that, but this circumstance, I think, is somewhat different in that it did not start out as, oh no, I'm going to do a project and not get a CA. It was like my wall is falling down, and I know that I can do maintenance, and it evolved into this quickly.
Correct.
So, I mean, it is a little different in that regard. So.
They have to review it like it wasn't built. So I think that one thing is the sidewalk's wider than it was, probably by about 8 inches maybe, and the steps. And the existing steps, I think, with the concrete cheek wall, and the retaining wall is probably added later, in my opinion. But I don't know. Because it's kind of like it's not part of the steps. So I think it ought to be rebuilt as it was, historically, in my opinion. We would not approve it otherwise. Wouldn't approve it the way it was built. Understand why it happened, but that's my opinion.
I agree.
I don't know that I'm completely in favor of rebuilding the entire structure, but there's 2 pieces of that retaining wall that actually jut up a little bit that doesn't seem to match what was previously there. I guess what I'm wondering is there a compromise on
If you lower those stone walls, then you won't have a cheek wall on the side. It had one before. It doesn't now.
It doesn't, but it would. The retaining wall would then be the same as it was before without cheek walls.
Yeah.
Now the retaining wall is different and it doesn't have cheek walls.
So you'd be basically exposing the stair and the concrete. I'm not sure that would.
I think if they could knock down that part that kind of comes up like you're describing, I think the cheek wall could be added pretty easily. I mean, it'd be a matter of putting some anchors in the existing concrete, forming it up and pouring.
It would continue to the stone wall and not to the sidewalk?
I think you'd have to at that point, because if you removed, at that point the cheek wall would be functional kind of, because if you remove the kind of the top, whatever, 8 inches or something of that stone wall, then you'd have part of that stairs is kind of exposed. So the cheek wall, if you formed up a new cheek wall, would kind of catch that top corner of the stairs. Then, I mean, it'd pretty much approximate the existing conditions. So.
No, not the store condition, in my opinion. Just my opinion. It doesn't.
It'd be a whole lot closer, though, than what it is now.
We wouldn't approve that. We're supposed to look at it as if it hadn't been built. So it's not like a house addition. It's steps.
Yeah. And that, this to me, it's a very utilitarian part of the character defining feature. I understand steps and
It's right in
retaining
front.
walls are defining features for the district. But, I would hope that we could find some common ground. I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Fudge, because if we can find a little middle ground where we're not having to completely start over, I think we'd be amenable to some suggestions there.
Well,
Sounds
what
like
is the middle
maybe
ground?
At this point, it may just be necessary to continue it one more time and let the applicant look at
Some options.
How could you recreate that historic detail in a way that's going to cause the least damage to the work that's already been done?
Well, I'll say again, the sidewalk's wider, the steps are wider. There's more to it than just the retaining wall detail, in my opinion.
We also don't know what the width is, though. If we continue it, then the applicant has a chance to give us the dimensions of the sidewalk and that kind of thing, because...
You can kind of tell by those joints where it was and where it is now, so...
I guess I'm not understanding. I didn't know that the sidewalk had been widened. Is this, how do we know that?
You'd have to look at the historic photos, but there's one in here that shows the outside of the, quote, cheek wall lining with those joints.
Now, we'll say we've
Right there,
allowed...
that one right there. And you see when get to the top of the stairs, and then the sidewalk aligns with the inside of the cheek wall. So I bet it was probably about 8 inches.
Who did the sidewalk?
Same builder or same contractor.
Oh, they did. I thought you said the city built some new sidewalks.
Oh, yes, they did. The city did all the sidewalks at the street. So,
The city did the public sidewalk.
Right.
And then the homeowner replaced the front walkway
Oh,
that
the
goes
walkway,
back to
okay.
the porch.
That's right.
I thought you were talking about the width of the sidewalk.
yeah, so, looks like about 4 inches on each side, so maybe 8 inches
inches
wider.
narrow,
But again, to match the opening of the retaining wall was what was
Yeah,
maintained.
so it was,
Right.
4 foot, now it's almost 5. So.
Now, we don't know what the
Or 30.
dimensions are, so it's kind of, we're not 100% sure on that. But I know that we've approved sidewalks leading up to houses where it might have been, 3 or 4 feet wide, and we've allowed them to widen it to 5 feet, which is kind of city standard now for ADA access and things like that. So
No, it's not. For public sidewalks, 5 feet's minimum, but that's not a public sidewalk. That's a private sidewalk. And it's not ADA accessible. It's on private property, so. Right.
I'd like to continue this to give the homeowner time to explore options based on the discussion you've heard today. I don't know if we voted today if it would end up being denied, so this would be an option for you to do that. Are you amenable to a continuance?
I was curious how how everyone's feeling. Are we looking at this as not an approvable situation?
I think we're on both sides here. So you could take a vote if you want to take a vote.
Would you like?
just to be clear, if it were, let's say if it was denied, would that be with or without prejudice? So could they come back with a revised proposal? Like if they had left to go do a continuance now, kind of the same thing that they would present us then? They would
So
make a
without
new application.
prejudice, they could bring a new application back. With prejudice, they couldn't propose the exact same thing, right?
Right. Even with prejudice, if they came back and proposed to put it back like it was, then we would take that application in. We only would, with prejudice only prohibits them reapplying for exactly this same thing, again, for a year. Now, if it's continued, what I would say is if it's continued and you're able to come to a plan that the homeowner's agreeable to, that restores the historic condition, we can administratively approve that. We could have administratively approved that from the get-go. Or if there's a middle ground that we think might be a compromise, that would come back to the commission. Or if they still want to go forward and say we don't want to make any changes, then that would be denied. Or may or may not be denied.
Right. So we could take a vote today and still make the deadline and be at the next month's meeting with a revised plan.
If it's denied today by the commission, then it's denied and it's over, and it will route back to code enforcement.
Right. So we could make a new application for the next month's meeting.
Yes.
Or somebody could move for approval, see how the vote goes.
For the next month's meeting.
Yeah, if it doesn't pass, then we do a continuance.
Oh, yes, you're right, of course. Sorry, Paula. Yeah, so it would be the October meeting. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was listening to Paula. What was that?
Frankly, I think there might be some options for a compromise. I mean, I would suggest a continuance.
That
Because
makes
based on
most
our
sense.
discussions, I'm wondering if it, I don't know, I think there might be a compromise there.
Might get 50% at least.
So we're moving toward a continuance. Is that okay with you?
It's there, so. They're waiting on us.
I think we'd like to go ahead and take a vote, just so we know where everyone sits.
That's if someone is willing to make a motion.
Correct.
To approve or deny it.
I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 19-00035 as submitted.
What? That's the wrong number.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, changed my deal.
2-9.
2-9. And let's see. Well, Holly, where is she? I get to this point, it's really hard. If you look at the specific findings, it makes it very difficult for me to find a finding that would allow you to go forward.
I have looked at them. Let me get that there with you.
I mean, it kind of breaks every rule.
That's why I'm torn on this as well. That's why I kind of suggested, let's take a look at maybe a continuance, unless you want to put it to a vote, I guess if anyone wants to.
It's just this is a condition we see a lot in the neighborhood. And so I feel like it would be something that would be approvable by standard of just that very thing.
I mean, unfortunately, if it would have been brought forward, I don't think it would have, we would have said, no, you have to go back. So when you look at this and we try to get the specific findings, which is the only way that we're going to feel comfortable, and I sit here and read them, I'm willing, and I think that in different cases, we do, for many different reasons, allow things to happen. I wouldn't say that today is that day for you, Holly. So I would suggest again to continue. It really is not going to make any difference.
You're right. That's why I thought, well, let's go ahead and get a vote and just see what we can do.
I would make a motion to continue.
Okay. We'll accept that. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
We can do September 4th or October 3rd. For September 4th, we'd need everything from you by this next week. Yeah. Okay. October 3rd.
October 3rd, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It's going to be moved by
October 2nd.
October 2nd.
Second.
It's been moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by Nina Crane Clements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's continued. Thank you. Onward.
HPCA 19-35 at 228 Northwest 32nd Street, Edgemere Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Sam Gresham Architects for Debbie McGill for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace windows, elective. And the commission has seen this application previously and didn't have enough documentation on the condition of the windows. We now have a window survey that I think pretty thoroughly documents the condition and the issues that they're having with the historic windows that are there. Staff's remaining concern was that it appears that the proposed replacement windows are a simulated divided light, which the guidelines do not allow within the historic structure.
Sorry, I thought that was corrected last time. We will use all true divided light.
What?
All true divided light will be proposed, is what we're proposing. I'm sorry if that was not communicated in the
And I know we had
report.
a lot of emails going to various people with different attachments, so it may be that you sent us.
I did kind of come into this project later too, kind of after the process had begun with the homeowners. So,
And I hate to be the stickler, but you have to state your name and...
oh, I'm sorry, Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architects, 400 Northwest.
She's proud of me. Well, it's for the record on the tape, so.
Certainly.
All right.
I think the staff report also notes that we're lacking details around the windows. Do you have those? Were those submitted?
I know that we had submitted a Colby window package. That was actually submitted prior to my involvement, so I didn't look it over a lot. I can certainly get you information on the windows that we'll be using, but we're going to match them exactly. These specific windows, the homeowners would be amenable to restoration if it were possible, if there were in fact enough material to save. The homeowners bought this house, some years ago for their daughter. Now they've downsized. This is going to be their permanent home. They have done a lot to maintain and beautify this home over the years, and these windows are where they just stop because guys, I'm talking wet, soppy material. You can just push your finger through the sashes.
Okay, so there's other information, comparison between existing and proposed windows. Is that still lacking, Katie? Or did the window survey help that?
I think we're in good shape on that. I think now that we have the window survey and it's, labeled very precisely, I think we're in good shape on that.
So the intent is to go back with solid wood, single glazed, true divide light windows.
That's correct.
Okay.
Katie, can you approve that if they bring in the correct specifications with the windows and the trim?
I would say the commission needs to approve it with the condition that they submit that we make sure we've got everything. Yeah. Yep,
Happy
that's fine.
to do that, certainly.
Okay, I make a motion to approve HPCA 19-00035 with the condition that the wood windows with the true divided lights be submitted to staff with drawings showing how the trim will match the existing trim around the windows.
And a single pane?
And single pane. Well, yeah. True divided lights, it will be, Katie, those could still be
thermal paint.
They can be thermal pane, but it has to be a
I want to ask
divided light.
one more question. So, Katie, you're satisfied with this documentation? These windows can't be salvaged for the most part? I realize they've documented some bad conditions, but that's not 100%. Do you feel that way? I mean, there's folks that rebuild windows.
There's what?
There's folks that rebuild windows, as you know.
I felt like looking through it, reading all of the descriptions that they gave of, it appeared to be documenting every window, that the damage, the rot seems
Documented
comprehensive.
How? Was it photos?
They've got photos, and
wood
they've
windows,
they've got photos of all of the windows.
All
that's
of
in
the
your
windows.
packet. They've got written descriptions. They've got them each labeled for every elevation, and then photos from the exterior and the interior showing where there's damage.
Linda, it looks like that in your packet.
All of the windows are documented. And
Guys, this is the worst I've ever seen, and you guys know I do a lot of these historic homes.
What are you saying?
I'm saying this is the worst condition of any windows I've ever seen.
Katie, just from my knowledge, it's been a while since we've looked at a case like this. Could you remind me what the guidelines suggest for existing windows? At what point do you have to try to restore them, and when can you replace it with new windows? Even if you had new windows that exactly approximated the old windows, what is the requirement there?
So it's you can replace historic windows if they are more than 50% deteriorated beyond repair, which is kind of an odd way to phrase that. What we usually look at is if you were to repair that window, not counting the glass, would it be more than 50% new material? That if it's just the bottom rail of a sash and you can go back in and replace that, then that doesn't count. But when you've got, the jams and it's not aligning and
Black mold,
and the wood is just rotted all the way
muntins are
through.
literally warping. They're curved. It's really bad shape. Really bad shape.
I saw a figure in here, estimated depletion at 75 or 90. Did you come up with those numbers?
Yeah, based on how many individual pieces were damaged of the 100%, I just started subtracting. I mean, I can assure you that there would be not a single window that you could retain 50% material on.
From your personal inspection?
Inside and out.
Did any window restoring companies look at it, or
I did call
an expert?
I did call Ty at Wood Window Rescue. He's looked at the project. He had just agreed with me, and because there were some windows that I thought...
Did he say they couldn't be restored?
No, that's right. He agrees with me that they're beyond salvage.
Beyond salvage. That's good independent.
It's an opinion. I don't have it written, but
all right.
We've done projects together, and he agreed this was the worst condition of windows he's ever seen.
The windows are such a very important topic in our neighborhoods. That's what I'm saying. I sometimes love to replace mine, but I'm going to have to do some major work one of these days.
It'd be helpful, too, if he had done that in writing. I mean, if he had explained it, and if we had an expert opinion on, is it 75% or are they all...
Could we ask
and it just has to be 50%, correct?
Yeah, over 50. So could we ask for him to submit some opinion, letter or something that states that?
I suppose you could.
I'd like to have an
again another month.
Sorry, I'd like to have an independent window expert, because this is a big deal to me, all the windows.
And the guidelines do ask the applicant to provide that sort of documentation so that we can make the right decision.
Well, and I think as a design I have a certain level of expertise as well.
You do. I'm not questioning that.
No, not to be rude. I'm just saying, to what end do we need how many people to say, yeah,
it's kind of like structural opinion on tearing down a house. The windows are very important. I think it's not hard to do. So.
But we also don't, even if applicants include a structural engineer's report, sometimes, that's just a piece of evidence that we can consider.
True.
And it may not sway us in the direction of the applicant.
Might not, but I think would help here to me, at least in my opinion, for me.
I think also the house was built in 1928. Every year that we go forward, we're going to see, we now have 90-year-old windows. I'm not saying that they can't be repaired, they can't be fit, whatever, but I think that we're at that point, almost 100 years, that we're going to see more and more of this come forward where we're going to have to replace, because you can only, unless things are really well taken care of. And there's, if they're well painted every year and they're attended every year, just like a lot of things, but when you have, we're just going to have a lot of situations like this where we're going to see more replacement, and windows are certainly going to be at the top of the list as far as replacement. I think there's, when you're talking about a 90-year-old window, I think we have to take that into consideration.
We see a life cycle for wood components,
That's
especially
exposed.
that are exposed, and if they have not been well maintained, a lot of these windows, the same as a lot of our garages, if they haven't been taken care of, they reach a point where something has to happen. I was going to ask if people are otherwise comfortable with the conditions that were discussed for the replacement windows. Would the commission be okay with that written statement from Wood Window Rescue submitted to staff that will release the CA upon receipt of that? Because we work with them.
And the written statement is going to say what the guidelines say. In other words, it's going to be his opinion. It's 50% or more of every window.
Okay. I will be okay with that.
Okay. I'll second that.
Is that a motion for something?
Mary Jo,
Bill, you make that? Did you make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
A long time ago.
That's moved by Joe Mitchell, second by Neil. Clement, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's been approved with condition.
Thank you, everyone.
And in the future, that can be something we can, request as we get into more of this.
And we do usually advise applicants when they're looking at window replacement to find someone who is qualified to do window repair, not just the Pella salesman.
Yes.
Assess the condition of the windows and get something written up for us.
Yeah, if that recommendation had come from the suppliers of the new windows, it wouldn't.
Yeah, that's not usually
would not be good.
helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Hpca 19-76 at 721 Northwest 14th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Aaron Reniger for Certificate of Appropriateness to 1 Construct Edition, Elective.
Is the applicant present? Okay. So we will, or anybody like to speak on to this? Heritage Hills?
Is anyone from Heritage Hills that would like to speak on behalf or against this application?
I see him back there.
We did receive written comment on this one.
All right, so applicant's not present. And
Shannon Rundle for Heritage Hills. We didn't have any negative on this, the way this addition's been done, but as you could see from all the drawings on it, the house has been enlarged substantially already, and we were just asking to just remind you all that we don't need people covering their whole property with a house. And this one does have a very large addition already present. And this small addition isn't going to make a bit of difference, but in our opinion. But anyway, it's a pretty big structure already. So,
thank you.
One thing I will note that's in your staff report but was not called out in the staff recommendation is that there is kind of an option A and B on the side elevation of the proposed addition. Their preference was to not have windows along that side, but they did include an option that relocates to existing windows, kind of one to each end of the proposed addition, just to incorporate a little more articulation on that side.
Did they do that on their own, or did you request that?
I believe that was through discussion back and forth with staff that they came to that.
Katie, speaking to Shannon's comment about reducing green space, how much more green space does the proposed addition cover than what is existing? 'Cause it doesn't seem that it's significant, but...
What they're adding is 204 square feet. So, yeah, in proportion to the existing structures that are already there, it's pretty minimal. I think it's just that cumulative effect of adding and adding and adding.
And we don't really know how much has been added from the original.
Originally?
Well, probably the entire additions from the back of the house to the front of the garage, I would expect.
Yeah, if you look at page 3 of 32 of your staff report, or page 2 and 3, we've got the Sanborn maps that, there was, as far back as 1922, there was kind of a one-story L extension off the rear of the house. And then from that, they've kind of extended out. They've built that little covered portion between the house and the garage. I'm not sure if they've expanded or if they've replaced the garage, but the garage is larger. And they're just filling in that corner along the side of that L extension.
What's that little structure between, that's kind of connected by, it looks like breezeways or something?
I think there's a little covered patio cabana.
Okay, it's like a cabana,
kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if you look in the picture now, you can see that. This also is a very large lot,
columns,
right? 80 by 170?
Yes.
I don't know if I don't like it better without the extra windows on the side. There's a lot of windows. Kind of adds a, I don't know what you guys think. What's that perspective view? There's a lot going on here. I don't mind if they prefer it without windows. Sometimes you want to have solid and, but otherwise I think the addition makes sense. To me, it's better than the long linear connector between those two buildings. It makes the kitchen much more useful, too. So, I'm fine with it.
So how do we remain vigilant against people wanting to add on and add on and add on again? Like, where is, if we were to approve this today and they come back next year and want to add another 204 square feet, or they, it's like, how do we keep it in check?
We always go back to the historic footprint, do we not?
Well, we're not on this one.
But don't we?
Well, we have guidelines for how large an addition can be. And we have talked previously about if someone were to build an addition and then come back in a very short amount of time to build yet another addition, we would start to calculate all of those together and look at those numbers. But I think you also always just have to weigh the appropriateness of the addition within the context of the site. And if it's already overbuilt, then maybe it's not appropriate to add yet another addition. If within the context of what's there, more square footage is still in an appropriate range, then
So it's
approvable.
So it's 50% of the square footage of the footprint of the existing historic structure. We don't know. I don't know if we know what the historic structure is, or 750 square feet.
So this is 200. So
yeah,
I mean, they're well within that range.
What would you consider the historic footprint on this one?
Well, it has total living is 5,000 square feet.
That's not the footprint, though. That's both
So
floors.
divide it by 2, because it's already got the L. The L
the
is
stack.
historic. So
We have it on the Sanborn map.
wouldn't that be right?
I believe so.
So it's do they stack on top of each other? Yeah, it's pretty close. Okay, so we're within the guidelines, and it fits the site. And
Yeah, I mean,
not
it is
that
a large
big.
lot, like I said before. I think 204 square feet is reasonable, and I think the design is compatible with the historic structure. The window situation, I mean, our historic homes have lots and lots of windows. The addition that we're looking at on the screen now has windows. I think it essentially would look much like that with the new addition tacked onto that. So I'm for more windows, long story short. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
And they're existing windows they're proposing to reuse, so
Yeah.
I can go either way. Anybody else thinks anything?
I go either way. I don't really feel like it's make or break for me.
And the applicant, since they've submitted an alternate with those windows, they're okay with that?
Yes.
They're agreeable?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, you want to make a motion?
Sure. Let's see. I move to approve HPCA 19-0070076 to construct the addition with the 9 specific findings that are listed, and condition, I guess it would be, that the applicant build alternate number 1 perspective view as it's labeled on page 27 of 32.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Neela Crank Clements and seconded by Taylor Fudge. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approved. Down here. Okay. Did we ever, I don't know, there's a lot of people here. The folks that were here with the one on the consent docket, you don't have to stay. I don't know if we said that or not, but okay. Everybody here is still up to be considered. Next, D6.
HPCA 19-77 at 800 Northwest 41st Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Virgil Onan, Carry On Homes, LLC, for Donald Horton for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace skylight with dormer, elective.
There is.
Virgil Onan, Carillon Homes, Post Office Box 20721, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73156.
Okay.
I'm here to represent Donald Horton.
Okay, thank you. This one, it's upside down.
The Commission had seen this once previously and continued it. I believe there wasn't an applicant present, and the Commission needed more information or wanted to consider some alternatives to the dormer as a means of solving issues with the existing skylight.
Yeah, the skylight is a real problem. Number one, it wasn't installed properly, it wasn't flashed properly. This goes way back to 1983, before our client owned the home. If you notice with the pictures, we have interior damage from all the leaking. And we say, well, is it the skylight? It's the skylight. It's the flashing against the building there. It's also the flashing around the fireplace. My assistants and all, we went over this, and we studied it, and we thought the best solution is to do the dormer that encompasses that fireplace so that we could flash and counter flash with copper. We'd eliminate a ton of problems. And we tried to specifically see where the damage was coming from. There were so many points that we wanted to do this dormer. Back in 2003, when we did the addition with the garage and the two-story addition, we later, and Tom Wilson was the architect on this, we came up with that dormer, which was approved by the commission. And so what we were trying to do is mimic or take care of that skylight, getting it out of the way, so that we could be consistent with what's there on Chartel. So reviewing everything, the most efficient way to cover everything, to get rid of the leaks, from the pictures, if you scroll through and let's look at the fireplace if we can, you see the step flashing. We wanted to get rid of that. We could do that by having copper flashing, counter flashed. If there's more pictures of the chimney, I hope I have them, or it's in my packet.
Yeah.
It shows the top of the chimney. It has problems. Do you not show those? Okay, in the packet that I received, in which we provided, it shows some of the damage, and then...
Yeah, we've got those photographs.
He had a roofer that, through the years, has just put more sealer on, and it's a Band-Aid fix. And we've put off doing this project. You know, it was raining very much so when we first saw this, but our problems are, now we have the heat, but we need to do a lot of work there. If we can encompass that, and there is a shower or a tub shower that is, they did the skylight for one purpose, to give headroom for a tub shower that's in that area just below the skylight. You know, we thought the shower was leaking. There's no problems there. The problems are all directed at the skylight. It's too close to the building, per se. There's only about 4 or 5 inches in between there. And the way the chimney was originally done there, it's just a disaster area. So I hope and pray that you guys can reconsider, because I've gone through your remarks thinking that maybe we could do the repair on the skylight. That's just one of many problems.
What, if you just had the roof across there and then didn't have the skylight, what would be the clearance in the tub?
Probably not enough. Couldn't stand up there. That was the situation there. The bathroom is immediately to the west of there, towards the main ridge line. So back in '83, I think they tried to make that more palatable to have a skylight there, and all it did was add headroom. The owner doesn't like the skylight. He loves his dormer. And so, with all things being considered, I hope and pray that you would give us consideration to do that. We would have the same pitch as the original dormer that was added there in 2005, I guess it was. We were part of that. Also, to get rid of that, there's a sheet metal cricket that they tried to build years ago to try to divert the water. It's just a disaster. So anyway, I hope you'll reconsider, because replacing the skylight does us no good at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all considered this application when we received it and looked at staff comments, and I would have trouble approving a dormer there. In fact, in that location, we would likely not approve a skylight at this point. Guideline 3.7.17 says that new dormers have to be located only on non-primary facades. It's not appropriate to locate new features on front or street-facing elevations.
Right.
Such as a corner lot, which is what this one is. So I don't really know where we go from there.
I guess, since we got approval in 2005 for that dormer, it seems like there might be a way that we could get that dormer there. I never really viewed that skylight as a historical skylight. There's no features to it. It was a skylight that is very inefficient.
No, it's not historic.
I'm sorry?
It's not historic.
It's not historic,
Right.
but it is there.
Yeah, but it's there, and it was approved in 1983 by a previous owner. So the only difference in the dormers is this one wouldn't have any windows in it,
Yeah.
which would be counterproductive because there's a shower underneath, so we don't want
Yeah, it's very,
windows.
very short. It's more just a bump. So what do you guys think down there?
I mean, it's unfortunate that the bathroom's arranged the way it is and that they put the skylight in the first place to get the headroom. I'm torn because it's almost kind of like that's not something that we're considering, or, that's, what we're really looking at here is whether the dormer is appropriate or not. And, it doesn't have any windows, it's just kind of feature. And frankly, if I'm thinking about this, if you look at how it connects to it's got two different roof pitches it's attaching to, and the chimney, I mean, that's going to be a little bit of a flashing nightmare in and of itself, so.
Got to do something.
I just wonder, I mean, if you return the roof to what it was, and I know that that's something you're trying to avoid because of the headroom, but I don't know if you change it with a soaking tub or something that you're not, doesn't have a shower, it's a tub, and.
If you returned it back to what it was, it wouldn't really solve. It's still a messy connection.
Well, I mean, if you get rid of the skylight, it's going to be a messy condition no matter what, but if you did that, you could kind of, open up some of the roof, look at the chimney again, just reflash everything, tidy it up, and I think hopefully that would fix your water issues.
Well, it wasn't ever done right to begin with around the roof. And you have the pictures there. There's so much goop or sealer there. It's gray.
It's a mess.
They've created that stupid-looking cricket out of sheet metal. Should have been copper, but the design of it, it's just the way that it was built originally just is not conducive to do the right things we want.
I think the staff report mentioned repairing the existing skylight. I mean, we know it's not historical, but it's a whole lot less
Visually,
yeah. So I wonder, do you think that there's a way, and I know you'd have to kind of rework the whole flashing on the brick and the two roof gables and all that. If you got a modern skylight, a new skylight, just kind of rework the whole area, do you think that would be feasible to keep a skylight or a new skylight, flash it all, that would be dry? Or?
Right. We were coming off of the original eave line there where the half-round gutter is. We were doing that from the drawing, the projection there. That was going to be so we could encompass and take care of all that. And the skylight was very minimal. It was only, I think, 4.5 or 5 feet wide. It's not very tall. So we were trying to do something that would help us with the chimney as well. That was it. To replace the skylight or to play with that skylight is not efficient because it's too close to the wall.
Could you make the skylight narrower and so you had some roof that you could tie into, reduce the skylight? I'd like to see with an interior plan. I understand what you're saying, but it all kind of works together. The tub and where that skylight is and the headroom, and we just hate to see a vertical addition there. But we understand the problems there. I can totally understand the
We tried and tried, and this is the most efficient way we saw, and I don't know where we go from here.
I'd like to see, could you do some interior photographs of what that's, how that works on the inside and how that,
I think that'd be helpful, a layout to see how the tub interacts with that. Maybe even a section cut to the bathroom. I don't know if that would be possible to see what the head clearances are.
because that's kind of the justification for the whole thing. So I think that would help us at least, me, but.
Well, so that, would that justify a variance to the no dormers?
Well, I mean, at some point, we did give the homeowner a CA to do that,
Back in
which
80.
made them decide to do a bathroom that included a bathtub that you could stand up in. So it seems like hopefully we could find a solution where they could keep the bathtub, since we, the commission did at one point give them permission to do things that would allow for that decision. It seems like if we don't, and we take away the ability to have a bathtub, that doesn't seem...
We're not doing now, we just kind of like to understand it better.
But I mean, is that our goal? I mean, because I think it will help them with
What was the original?
design
Is our goal what?
alternatives.
Is our goal what?
What?
Is our goal?
To let them, to try to help them keep the bathtub.
Oh, well, I don't
Yes.
think we just like to understand it better.
Right, okay.
I would at least.
And I think the skylight, I mean, if the skylight was approved for them to then build the bathroom, I think that was kind of the original approval, if I'm understanding it correctly. And the dormer came later, which I guess you said was approved at one point.
2003, we did the, let me think just a minute, 2003 or 4, we did the new addition there that you're seeing. Okay, yeah, you see the deal there, and then we also did the garage. We even found bark face brick
To match?
that matched the house, which was incredible. I think we wound up giving $1.50 for the last 1,500, but we got those. We were able to match the masonry, so we're quite aware. This is just a deal we were handed off, and now that with all the damage inside. Let me ask you this. If we did the dormer, say we negotiate a deal to get the dormer or get your approval, if we were to use, okay, at the very first person up here talked about putting a double, they wanted a fixed window. Well, we know that double hung windows are approved in these areas. What if we put, just like the windows we had up there, what if we did something of a window package that would be in that little dormer, and then we actually sealed it off from the inside, just so that we had the appearance that, hey, this has windows? Would that have any bearing on what we're
I mean,
wanting
you
to
can
do?
present something new, but going back again to guideline 3.7.17, it says new dormers must be located only on non-primary facades. Now, in 2003, 2005, the guidelines have been changed since then.
Okay.
So very well back then, this other dormer could have been allowed, but I'm only one commissioner, but I'm reading the guideline. It says this new dormer must be located on a non-primary facade. So that's where I'm getting stuck.
Okay.
Because the only time that we have given an exception is for egress, is that correct?
Maybe someone needs to jump out of the bathtub.
Okay.
Okay, so what do you all suggest we do?
Continue it?
So we can continue to either September 4th or October 2nd, and staff can work with you on what additional, information we want to
Angela?
gather. Yep, and me.
And just to
Either-
give you-
either of us.
I'm sorry. And just to give some clarity and jump in if you guys have anything else, but so we talked about some kind of interior floor plan, so we know what's going on, maybe a section cut for the bathroom,
Or even photographs.
or photographs
From the
would be
inside
helpful.
would be good.
That would be good, yeah. And then maybe look at, is a smaller skylight option available that is a little bit farther away from the wall or something, so it's headroom. I don't know.
Okay. Is
Do
there a
you want
motion?
September 4th or October 2nd? They have to specify the date.
Let's go for September the 4th. And if that doesn't work, I'll tell Angela and do that.
Well,
Okay, once we
Once you
set
put
a
it-
date, we have to put you on that agenda, so you use up.
Let's do October 4th.
Okay,
give more time to get,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
Okay, is there a motion?
Was that October 2nd?
Right, October 2nd.
Yeah.
I didn't make a previous appointment or meeting here. I had some health issues, and please excuse me for that.
Oh,
Okay?
perfectly
All right,
understandable.
thank you.
I will move to continue HPCA 19-00077 to the October 2nd meeting.
Okay. There a second? Been moved by Neil Clements, seconded by Taylor Fudge. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, continued, and I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
but thank you. I'm going to have to leave, and Neela will take over the meeting. Thank you.
HPCA 19-89 at 704 Northwest 26th Street, Paseo, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Tim Turner, Turner & Son Homes, for Warren and Nicole Altabello for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct dwelling, elective, and 2, install driveway, elective.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
The Commission reviewed this application last month, commented on various elements of the design, continued it to allow them to consider some of those comments, as well as to further investigate the situation with alley access and using alley access for the garage. We have been able to confirm that the alley is open, that they can use that for garage access. There is no requirement that they have a driveway from the cross street. There was some confusion there about what those requirements were, but that is allowed.
Okay, are you the homeowner?
No, I'm a Jerry Captain with Turner & Son Homes.
Okay.
Here for Warren and Nicole Altabello.
Do you have some comments based on the staff report? Or anything else? Just comments in general?
Well, I just wanted to answer questions if there were questions to answer.
So I apologize, I was absent from the last meeting, so I didn't see this one originally, but I just had a few kind of concerns, I guess, about the overall design that I wanted to share, and I don't, I'm sorry that I wasn't here last week to present these, so I guess we can discuss how that's incorporated. But first, and this is just a matter of clarification on the site plan, which sheet is this? Page 11 of 40. It almost looks like the house is pushed back a tiny bit from the adjacent houses. I guess is the intention to match that frontage with the other house? It's tough to tell because there are no dimensions, so I'm just trying to figure out where that house is located in relation to the neighboring houses.
Right in the front. Warren, answer to that.
Warren Altabello, 700 Northwest 26th, the homeowner. So at the last meeting, we talked about the massing and centering of the home. Because we had it too far on the property line, we've since submitted a new plan where it's now centered. So we have the 5 feet on both sides. We're using the alley as our entryway. The frontage of the house will actually match the front of our current home, which is what you see there. That's where the front of the house will come, and then the porch will extend past that. Does that answer?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I just didn't see any dimensions, so and it's kind of tough to see in a sketch. I just want to make sure that the kind of front of the houses.
Yeah, we're going to stay with, I think Katie gave us the guidance about staying consistent with the layout of the rest of the houses on the street.
Right.
I think this is a block that's not entirely uniform.
It's
There's
not.
variations.
They look
out some jet, and we're trying to stay consistent with the 2 houses next to us, our house and our neighbor's house.
Okay.
Mr. Altabello, I too was, and fellow commissioners, I too was absent from the meeting last month when this was initially heard. So I was surprised when I got the staff report and staff had recommended approval. Looking at the plans, I know you guys have owned this lot for many years, right?
Yeah.
Decades probably? Yeah, so it's really exciting that you're wanting to put a house on it now. But just looking at the front elevation, infill development is supposed to complement the existing structures on either side across the street on a block and not detract from it. And when I first opened this, I just saw it detracting from it. The stone planter in the front, the fenestration pattern above the wood beams, I don't know what my fellow commissioners think, but I feel like there needs to be more sensitivity with the design. I think there is a way to do infill development with the contemporary structure within a historic neighborhood, but I just don't feel that this one kind of hits the mark. Any thoughts?
I totally agree, and I had a few other kind of comments on that. With new construction, it's tough because you don't want to match what's historical necessarily. You want to stand on its own. At the same time, it needs to complement the neighborhood, and frankly, I mean, overall, it matches kind of the massing and the form of the neighborhood. So I wanted to write down some kind of specific things that I felt could be tweaked to make it better kind of fit the neighborhood. And specifically, the stone planter was one thing. I think what you see in a lot of houses in historic neighborhoods is that you can walk right up to the front door, or the front door is open. So you might have a porch with a railing around it or something, but generally that approach to the door is open. And I feel like having literally a wall in front of the front door is kind of detrimental to just the overall character of the house, and really not consistent with kind of the pattern of development in the neighborhood. So that was kind of one key comment on the front. Another thought I had is on the facade. There's so many different materials being used, and I think if you just reduce the number of materials, literally just the siding, if you still wanted maybe some kind of a stone wall, maybe if the stone wall, instead of being in front of the front door, if it was shifted to the side, you had, steps going up to the front door, and that may be formed in the porch a little bit. That might be an interesting alternative. You'd still have the interest from the different material from the stone for the wall, but it seems a little, almost like a little bit cluttered, or there's so many different materials between the wood and the siding and the stone, and I wonder if there's a way to simplify that.
That's the issue I have with the feedback on that. Is it is a modern bungalow. We are trying to be sympathetic to the neighborhood, because obviously we're big on HP. We're involved in helping the neighborhood become HP. As we looked throughout the neighborhood, we didn't want to have this house absolutely stand out, but the different facade or the different materials are used to break up that linear, just all siding look, because that's not really an attractive look, if you ask me. I mean, when you go to the modern view, or as we expand into a new century here, that's a pretty, it's not a real in-your-face look. I don't see it that way. I mean, I see it as that siding is what's allowing us to break up that view a little bit. It gives a little more contrast, I guess, as opposed to just seeing just straight lap and panel hardy board or whatever straight across.
No, I totally get that. It's funny how like the word modern and contemporary kind of get used, and to me this is almost more contemporary. When I think of modern, I think of something that's really focused on proportion, simplicity, materials. I think there are ways you can detail siding in an interesting way, and where it can use the windows and different elements of the building to create that kind of dynamic structure, kind of add some texture maybe, instead of it just being a flat wall, which I think is kind of what you're getting at. You don't want just a flat wall of siding, which I totally get.
You want it to have a little character. There's a lot of houses in our neighborhood, they're older and they're like farm style. I mean, ours is a Cape Cod. The house next to us is, a bungalow. The neighborhood's pretty eclectic on the styles. Again, we tried to come in as close as possible to still look modern and new, but maintain the historical integrity of the neighborhood.
I would almost say, your house is a beautiful house. It's all siding. Has a pretty regular window pattern, but it's very tasteful. It has nice proportions. I just wonder if there's a way that you can kind of take those properties from your existing house. Maybe the windows are, maybe you have casement windows instead of, double hung or the old kind of divided light windows. I think there's a lot of things you can do to make the house stand out, but still have a little bit of a simplicity in the materials, or, I definitely I think the wall in front of the door is that is a big sticking point to me, I think. I think having the door accessible and feeling like you can just walk up to it, I think that's pretty critical to the kind of pattern of development in the neighborhood. So those would be really...
I would just say there are other houses in our Paseo district that have those side entries. And they have the walls there, so it's not out of character.
Okay, comments from other commissioners?
I mean, I understand that it's really, when we make comments, we try not to, we're not trying to design it for you. So when we have something that's different and complicated, I know it's hard for the designer or homeowner to go away and know what to come back with. But I would agree with the other commissioners that I think we're not there on the compatibility, and that the comments, I think, are prudent for this particular design. I would add that, and I don't have a copy of were there a lot of changes to the form of the building, or did you just move it over on the lot?
No, we just centered it. We just took the council's comments last time.
Because we did discuss that, and that was just really a question, was it legally correct to have it, a certain distance, and we wanted to make sure. And then the other question was the alley. But I think that we did discuss the design features, and I think that they have good comments. I would still, the shape of the windows, and I did ask for more detail, and you have given more detail. I still feel like that we're still not there, and for me, and that also, again, the way that it's detailed, and I know it's difficult. We want to make sure that we know exactly what it's going to look like, and so I don't know, maybe you need to have a designer that can maybe detail it out a little more.
I did get one additional elevation drawing from the applicant that came in after your packets went out, and it just occurred to me that I didn't provide that to you all. And he did take the wall section and the design details and add those into the elevation. So I do think on the architectural details, the finishes, the wall section, we've got pretty good documentation of that. And I apologize, I didn't get that distributed to everyone.
I guess I would still feel like that I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and until I was confident of what it was going to look like and some changes were made, I don't feel comfortable giving you specific direction, but I don't think we're quite there for this house in that neighborhood.
Okay. I think I would have to agree with my fellow commissioners here. There's several items that just really aren't supported this time.
This is not what you guys said at the last meeting. Nicole Altabello, 700 Northwest 26th. That's my house we live in right now. And we have bent over backwards trying to give you guys, and I know these two commissioners, weren't here last time, but at our last meeting, it was assumed that if we did what the commission asked for, that we would get approval. Now we're going to have to go, I am the person that was the president of our neighborhood association to get us HP. And I told you guys this last time. I know that you two people weren't here. And also my husband helped design the guidelines for when we got them from Grapevine, Texas. So, it's not that we're just kind of coming in here and moving in here. We don't want to move away from our neighborhood. We want to stay. My mother lives across the street. My daughter lives around the neighborhood, other corner, and we have done a lot for this neighborhood. And we don't want to move, but, you guys we assumed, and both of you guys were here. I'm sorry, ladies, gentlemen, that you were here last time, and we assumed that if we went along with what you guys said, that we would get approval and we could start building the house. And now we're going to go another couple of months. If you guys would just tell us what you want us to do, because that's what we assumed that you were saying last time. You said, we need to get the alleyway clear, make sure that that's legal and all that kind of stuff, so we could have the driveway come in through the back, make the house a little bit wider, and then there was something about the garage, and we took care of that in the design, and then we got staff approval, and my husband and I were like overjoyed. We were like, went out for dinner that night when we got the
I can understand it is, when the staff does approve something, I know how it can be.
It's not the staff, it's the recommendations that Alan Brown was here that gave us from the perception that we got from the last meeting that we were here.
Well,
so from what let me
understand.
ask you this. Are you telling us that we're going to have to come back next month and do something else, or should we just move?
Where I was going is, well, this is an iterative process, and I would make the recommendation that we continue for another month and come back with some new design elements, because none of us are really comfortable. None of us. I am not comfortable with some of the elements.
Can you tell us exactly what you would like for the new design elements? I have not heard anything about windows that weren't appropriate last time, okay? And I'm not trying to be judgmental on you guys. My mother was on the commission, and my stepmother Randy Floyd was on the commission before, so I understand how the commission works. But I would just like to get this done.
Well, Ms. Altabello, one thing the commission cannot do is design your project for you. We can offer advice based on the guidelines to, whatever design that you would support the guidelines.
I understand that.
Now, the commissioners that were not here last month, did not hear this case then, have provided some information to you to help you move forward. We've had other commissioners who were here that are also saying this is not it.
Okay. Well, that is not what the perception.
I understand, and I hear your
time.
frustration.
I am very frustrated. If you guys would just tell us, this window is not going to work. This window will work. This siding will not work. We're not going to prove it at this.
That's not going to happen. And, unfortunately, you've chosen to, the hardest thing we do probably is new construction. And it's difficult.
I understand that.
It's difficult. I would say most of the time it is a long process, and it goes back and forth, and we suggest people to come in and talk to staff. Staff still can't really read our minds, and they can't design your project either.
And I think that our builder, just on my builder's behalf, has worked with Katie and her staff a lot. So just to let you know that there's no kind of disconnect between our builder and the staff here at the city.
One suggestion I would have is that you consider hiring an architect that has worked a lot in these historic districts.
Well, I'll just have my
little more
stepmother do it
sensitive.
then.
Okay.
Randy Floyd, who was on the commission before.
Okay, great.
So as it were, just for future builders that might want to build stuff in the neighborhoods, they need to have an architect do this? Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say that. I suggested you might consider having an architect
Well, I can do that. I'm just,
who is
because
more
other people are asking
sensitive
us.
to what would be compatible within your block. That's my suggestion.
Okay, have you guys looked at the other homes that are on our block?
Yes.
And the home that is on the next block from the 25th Street, it's
New house on 25th Street.
the new house that's there, and their siding and stuff is their fence is horizontal instead of vertical and stuff like that.
You said the fence, though, correct?
Pardon me?
I think that house, they did a great job in kind of keeping it very simple, the window pattern.
Yeah, but but the windows are similar to the ones that we have in our design, just so you know. And we talked to Mr. Rainey several times, and he's come over, and we've talked to him and trying to get this thing through. And I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm really not. But I thought we were going to be approved, and we could get on with our lives kind of deal.
I really apologize I wasn't here last time, and that I know it's frustrating. As a matter of fact, I went through the same process, I think, 2 years ago. I built a house. I think I had to come back. I might have come back.
Well, you're a lot younger than me. I've got maybe 30 years left on the planet, so I'm just trying to.
Well, and we absolutely don't move, and we love that you're in the neighborhood and that you've contributed so much. So we, it's tough because we don't want to be any more difficult in a sense, but there are just a few key concerns that we have, and I always try to be very clear about what those concerns are so that you can go back and tweak the things that we have concerns with.
Okay.
And of course, we can't design that for you. So,
Okay, so we're going to continue this, is my understanding. So should we get with Katie again, based on your recommendations? Can we get any kind of maybe that if we do what you guys want us to do
yes.
and go forward?
So we can't design it, obviously, as
Of
Mary
course,
Jo
I don't
said,
want you to
but
design it.
I would say one of my concerns was the planner, and so that you have that, front door access. That was one of my concerns. I think...
And that wasn't even brought up last time.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm sorry I wasn't here last time.
Well, we're all on committees.
Yeah.
I'm on committees. We're all on
Okay,
committees.
so you asked for specific things. He's commenting on the planner.
Right. And I just want to know what you want us to do next.
Okay. We've also talked about, there's a lot of different building materials. You mentioned that house on 24th?
25th.
25th?
Yes,
Maybe roll around
More
the same
simple.
time.
Rainy.
So, I think that would be a direction you could look to go. I take issue with the windows above the wood beam. I think there's a lot going into this.
So what about, one question I did have,
Sure.
Commissioner, is about the wood beams that stick out. There are several houses that, although those beams aren't as wide as the ones that we have on the design of our house, they are half of it. I mean, a bunch of them.
Sure.
And so, just to let you know, I know we don't have pictures of those here, but we can certainly...
And frankly, I personally don't really have a big issue with the overhang or the beams. I mean, I think, that does differentiate it. It still has kind of a historical form in a sense, or it kind of matches the neighborhood, but it is more contemporary because it is a cantilever, so it's kind of...
I understand that the home is more contemporary, but we want to have a single level because we're getting older and that kind of...
Yeah. No, so I don't have any problems with that. I kind of second the opinion on the windows above the beam. I think those kind of seem out of place, and then maybe even the triangular window over the other two windows. But, like I said, we can't design it for you, but those are kind of the key takeaways.
So going forward,
Simplicity
we
and
should
materials.
get back with Katie.
I
We're
think
gonna
you should
continue
work
this.
on simplifying the design.
What do you
Work
mean?
with Katie.
Wait,
What we've just said, the stone
Simplifying,
planter.
like taking out windows.
No, didn't mention taking out windows, but he did mention the stone planter.
So
Lots of different building materials, the fenestration pattern on the front. Just look at reworking that. And again, we cannot design this for
I
you. We can
understand
just
that.
offer.
I understand that, Commissioner.
Offer that.
I do.
So, any other thoughts?
I will note that I think they're touching on a lot of things that your builder and I have discussed since the first day he came in. As these are some things that I think might be called out as, standing out as, not as typical of what we see in the neighborhood.
Of course.
So I think I have a good handle on what the commission's kind of touching on. So I think we can get together with you all, with your builder, and get to a place that everybody's happy with.
Well, I really would hope to start this before the winter. So, as we move along. And I appreciate the commission.
And we appreciate what you're doing. I just don't, I want you to know that you're not alone as far as somebody trying to construct, do new construction in historic districts. Everybody, if you could call everybody that's built a house in the last 4 or 5 years, and they would all tell you the same. It was a process, and it took a while. So,
including me, I was back, I think, at least twice.
Right. So,
yeah, we've been here since '95,
Right.
and there used to be hypodermic needles in my yard when I mowed. So,
we certainly appreciate the effort, but just know that you're not alone in the process. It is a long process generally. So, but thank you so much.
So, Katie, can you tell us, as far as continuances, what they'll need, when they'll need to have documents for which meeting?
So our official, it's either September 4th or October 2nd. Generally, we say everybody needs to have all new materials in by the following Tuesday. I think the bulk of what your staff report is going to say is already there, so we probably can allow a little more time than that if you want to try and get on for that September 4th meeting, depending on your schedules and availability to turn around and start working on it. Or we can certainly do October 2nd. I don't mean to push you, but I know you're wanting to get going. I don't think anyone's saying total rework. I don't think.
It just has that feel to it. I'm just personally internalizing it.
Yay,
It just has the
great
feel that
night.
To me, it just, people want a plain Jane house. I'm going to sit down with my builder, and I'm not doing a plain Jane house. I'm just telling you guys that. If you want to vote it down when you come back, you vote it down. But there's a line that has to be drawn somewhere. If you vote me down, I'll go to the Board of Adjustment. What do we got to do? We go ahead and extend it.
So none of that was on video? We couldn't hear any of that? Should he repeat it?
My husband is just
Yeah,
saying
that's fine.
that
That's
he's
fine.
frustrated, but.
Sure.
And if we have to.
But we
go
like to
Board of
keep everything
Adjustments, we
recorded.
will, but we don't think we're going to have to do that. Of course, and we work with the city, we work there forever. So.
So would you like to continue it to the September or the October meeting?
No, we'll go September 4th.
Let's go September.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Sounds good.
And I
Do we have
appreciate
a
the
motion?
commission's support and consideration on this. We really do. Okay.
Do we have a motion to continue this to September 4th?
I make a motion to continue HPCA 19-00089 to the September 4th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Mary Jo Meacham, seconded by Taylor Fudge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
HPCA 19-94 at 112 Northwest 26th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Kenneth and Kathy Schuford for a certificate of appropriateness to 2, remove porch column and portion of porch floor, elective. And the commission saw this application last month, along with several other items that were approved. And the remaining item was the removal of this porch column. There was a question about whether or not we thought it was historic. The applicant encouraged the commission to go by and take a look in person. If you had the time to do that, staff did go out and take a look. I will say that this is a challenging one. It's not a typical porch configuration by any means to have this kind of standalone or freestanding column that's not supporting anything in the way that this porch is laid out in particular. However, the brick is a very close match to the brick on the other porch columns. The composition of the mortar is a close match to the mortar on the other columns, even though this one clearly has weathered differently. So staff was not at a point where we were convinced that it was not a historic feature. But, if we were confident it was non-historic, we could administratively approve the removal. Since we were not confident in that, it's back before the commission today.
Sir, are you the applicant?
Yes,
The owner?
Kenneth Schuford, 112 Northwest 26th Street.
Okay, thank you for coming today. The burden of proof always lies with the applicant, and Katie feels like the porch column is historic. Do you have evidence stating otherwise?
No, I don't. I tried to find some historical
Sure.
pictures. I've actually talked to the previous owner, which his family owned. He's a descendant of the original owner of the house in 1922. He had contacted his sisters and brothers, and they couldn't find any pictures. Of course, he's reading the staff report. There may have been some changes to the house in the 55, somewhere in the 50s, I believe I saw that there was a reference to that. And of course, he was born around that time. So he had told me before that he believed that was all the roof overhang, the porch extending out to that column were added when his great aunt needed more income. So I didn't get a letter from him stating that, just because he was probably so young that he always saw it with the double door and the extra column. I would like to, if it's possible, pass out a few pictures that I took of that column, which I know you guys did too.
Do we have those photos already, or?
No, these were some that I took after looking at the ones that were in the new packet that you guys had taken. Is it okay to?
Could you hand those to Paula? Thank you.
And what you'll see in those is there's looking down the north face of the columns, that particular column is twisted. It's not square with the other originals. Measuring between the original porch column and that column on the north face is like, I believe it's 47 inches. You measure it on the other side between columns, it's 49. And then there's a picture in there projecting that particular column to the west. When you project that column down to the other end of the porch, it's almost 10 or 11 inches out of the alignment, which kind of blends me to believe that it may not have been original. Because, I mean, if the original brick masons were there, I think they may have put things in a straight line and not twisted a column.
So, Mr. Schuford, can you tell us why you need to remove it?
Well, we've already got approval to remove the
roof.
Mm-hmm. And we have the approval to remove that door. That particular column sits right in front of that bedroom window, which obscures the looking out the window to the street or the cul-de-sac. And if we are denied taking that column out, I would like to see if it was appropriate to lower that column to match the one in the middle of the original porch structure.
So just kind of looking at this, I'm wondering, so originally it was not a duplex, a single-family house.
That's correct.
There wasn't a door there. You didn't have the roof. It was just, to me, I think that almost tells me that it's not original because, you know, that column's clearly there to hold up that portion of kind of new roof, if that makes sense. And you've got that different, you know, the other ones have kind of built up pilaster, and that one has kind of wire, the metal grate. And maybe it'd be, I don't know, I feel like I thought you brought some interesting information that shows that it is twisted, and that it has different alignment. And looking at actually this picture that's up right now, I was kind of looking at the mortar, and it seemed like it had different mortar. But if I understand correctly, you've already repaired the mortar on the other columns.
No, we haven't.
Oh, you haven't? So that's different.
So if you look at those other three columns and then compare to that, if there were corrections to those other threes previous to us owning the home, they didn't do that one.
Gotcha. I mean, to me, I don't understand why you would build a tall column like that in that location originally. You know, if that roof wasn't original, what would have been the purpose of that column? So to me, I wonder if it is original. But
they do have photos of other examples in the
There are photos of other examples.
It's unusual, but they do have several photographs.
But some of them are tall as well.
Tall.
Okay.
Some are short, some are tall, but there are plenty of other houses on that street and surrounding streets that have that little.
Now those tall ones though were generally on the far corner of the house, right? If I'm correct on that.
The ones I saw on page
Like all the ones on, yeah.
and 13, they're more out away from those windows.
Right, like 13 and 14, all those columns that are circled are all out to the corner of the house and kind of caps the edge of the patio. So in that case, it makes sense. Have the column there because you're kind of capping the patio. In this case, the column's kind of in the middle of the front of the house. You know, it's like right in the middle of the facade. So to me, that wouldn't make as much sense to originally put a column in that location unless you're supporting the roof and putting that door. So just, you know, putting on my Sherlock hat.
Well, thank you for saying that, because now I do notice that as well. There's plenty of other structures that have that column out there, but it is evenly spaced.
Mm-hmm.
and not close to the edge there.
Any kind of cap off that corner of the house
Sure.
where you might have a patio or something, or, yeah. So this one's, I agree, I mean, it's like right in the middle of the facade, right in front of the window. So it's hard for me to believe that it would have been original and that you would have put a column in the middle of your house like that, since it wasn't originally a duplex. And given the fact that it's also shifted a little bit, and it makes me wonder if it's original.
To me, there's enough pieces of evidence there to go with the supporting idea that it's not original. But I guess I could certainly get behind it, approving the demolition.
Linda?
I don't think we can say it's not original, because I think that would be a leap for us. I mean, I think we can, if the commission wants to say.
Linda, is your microphone on? Your shirt?
We believe it is original, or we don't know if it's original, but if it is, we accept that and still allow it to be demolished. But I don't know that we know it's not original.
Well, I agree with that. I don't know if we have perfect 100% evidence. I think there's enough compelling evidence, at least for myself, to believe that it's not original. And if it were going to be detrimental to the historic nature of the house, but if I'm looking at the facade too, it's got a nice little porch, and it would have the 3 columns in front, which I think is very typical of the houses. So it actually, I think having the column there and removing the door and the roof, you almost end up with a non-historical character by having that column there, because you have kind of a tall column in the middle of the facade, that might, in another house where you might have the column, it might be shifted all the way up to the corner of a house or something. So I actually think in this case, we might not have 100% perfect evidence. I think we have enough to assume that it might not be historical, but I think even by leaving it, you might end up with a condition that is maybe even more awkward than if you didn't remove it. So.
I think
its removal, I don't think is going to hurt the overall characteristic, and it's still going to be similar to many bungalows.
Okay. Do we have a motion then?
Let me take a look at the staff report here. All right, I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 19-00094 with the specific findings that there's compelling evidence that the column may not be original and that the removal of the column will not have a detrimental effect on the historic character of the house.
Second.
Okay. Been moved by Clausroman Phillips, seconded by Mary Jo Meacham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Got it? All right. You've been approved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. All righty.
Sometimes when we get to 4 o'clock, we take a 5-minute break.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Okay, we have a quorum. Let's go ahead and move on to the next case, please. Katie?
Hpca 19-100 at 615 Northwest 26th Street, Paseo, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Alex Gator, Gator General Contracting for Beverly Bryson for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace siding on the garage with alternate material, elective, 2, replace garage doors, elective, and 3, replace sidewalk, elective. I think staff's only concern or condition on this was the item addressing the siding on the garage. The historic wood lap siding is present under, at least in portions of the garage, is present under the existing masonite siding, which we know is not the original material. So the guidelines say that when you take off that non-historic siding, you should go back to the original material. But the applicant had reasons for wanting to not do that, and so we said we'd bring this item to the commission.
Okay, you the owner?
Yes, I am Beverly Bryson. I'm at 615 Northwest 26th.
Okay, so Katie did mention that the guidelines do say that when inappropriate material is replaced, appropriate material such as wood siding shall be uncovered and restored, and you have specific reasons why that's not doable?
I feel like that based on the inside of the garage, it's termite damaged a lot, and so I'm thinking that once I take the siding off, the original materials would not be usable.
Right, so the guidelines say that, let's see, which one is it here? The historic condition has been described as wood siding, so when you pull that masonite off,
right,
you can repair that original wood siding or replace in kind.
So that's my only alternative, is that?
That's what the guidelines say, so. Comments from any commissioners?
I guess I'd like to know what it looks like underneath there. Right now, I think we're assuming that there's going to be termite damage.
I'm almost sure there will be, and there's all this rot on the lower level where the building hits the ground.
Sure.
There's because of improper drainage. It's been that way for years, and the roof is starting to sag, so the supporting beams on the whole place is going down. So I'm just going to repair it and replace it exactly as it is. But if we do take off the siding, will there be someone representing the council to look at it, an inspector to look at it, or do you take it off my own opinion? Or
well, you could show pictures to show that it's deteriorated beyond repair, and then, you know, actually this application, I think they've recommended approval so long as you replace it with wood siding. Is that right?
Yes, I believe so. And we do kind of give you some discretion on whether or not that wood siding is repairable versus whether it needs to be replaced. But usually, in cases like this, whether it's masonite or vinyl siding, what applicants will do is we'll do an approval with the condition that you remove it and then follow up with staff to document whether you're going to be installing new wood siding to match what was there or whether you're going to be able to repair the siding underneath.
yeah, I don't think it's going to be repairable, honestly. But okay, so once we determine that it's not repairable, so I will have to go back with the siding, and that means that I'll have to do the whole entire garage, correct?
You would only have to repair whatever needs to, or replace whatever needs to be replaced. I mean, if you only take off one wall and you only want to do that wall, if there's a wall that's, you know, close to the fence and is not visible and you want to leave that as is.
It would look kind of weird, wouldn't it? I mean, don't you think? Because most shiplap are not, you know, 8-inch view like it is now, like it shows now. Most of them I've seen are like the smaller width wood.
Yeah. No, it certainly looks more uniform and just attractive to do all of it at once. But we do have people that kind of stage siding replacement as they go, that they'll do one portion of a building at a time, and where they come to a natural stopping point, if they're not ready to do the rest of the work, leave what's there and then come back and finish.
In other words, we're not requiring you to replace all the siding on all four sides. You tell us what you want to replace.
Yeah, well, I was hoping to be able to have it look just like it is now, because it matches the house, and that's the way I bought it. I purchased it, so.
So just out of curiosity, do you know what the house siding is? The main house?
The main house looks just like that. It's the gray masonite. You can see.
Masonite or something?
Yeah, it's complementary.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think we don't ever go out and tell someone if they have, that they have to replace something. But if someone comes to us and wants to replace it, if we know what the historical condition is and that material's there, then I think the guidelines say that we need to replace it with a similar material or in-kind material. So I think wood siding's readily available. I understand that at that point it wouldn't match the house in theory.
But oftentimes garages don't match houses.
And if you at some point, let's say another 15 years, you have to replace the house siding, and I'm assuming that the siding of the house would have been similar to the garage, then...
I think it was put on about the same time.
Yeah, then maybe you match the house at that point to the garage, and it'd be back to being consistent.
I wouldn't be here then. I don't care. I just wanted to look now.
Okay, so are you amenable to going back with wood siding if you are indeed unable to repair the wood siding that is under that masonite?
Yes, if the smart side material is not acceptable. The smart side lap siding is not acceptable.
The guidelines do not support using that material.
Okay.
Now, if you found, if you started taking off the masonite and you realized that maybe the first 1.5 feet was rotted, deteriorated because, because water was splashed up against it or something, but the rest of it was in good shape, then, you could maybe get away with restoring the rest of it, repainting it, whatever you need to do, and just replacing that portion with the woods. Guess you won't know until you take it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's look at item 3, replace sidewalks around garage. Staff has recommended approval with a couple of conditions, that the concrete will match the aged appearance of existing paving and that successful drainage will be directed away from abutting and adjacent buildings.
Yes.
You agree with those conditions? Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Are we ready to hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Hpca 19-00100 with the specific findings and conditions as mentioned in the staff report.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Clausrum Phillips, seconded by Taylor Fudge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you've been approved. Thank you.
Hpca 19-102 at 2132 Northwest 29th Street, Schuford, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by David Britton, 1033 Associates, LLC, for Certificate of Appropriateness to 6 widen driveway elective and 7 install mechanical equipment and bollards required. I believe the applicant for this project contacted our office to say they would not be at the meeting today, but that if approved, they would agree to all the conditions that are included in the staff report.
Okay. Anyone here in the audience to speak on behalf of this? Neighbor? No? All right. If the applicant has agreed to the conditions, do we have a motion?
I would make a motion, so it is to approve to widen the driveway with the condition that it will not exceed the 20 feet, misspelled word, the 20 feet width until reaching the rear walls of the house and the duplex. And the paving will match the existing. And then the other conditions are in regards to either removing or screening the bollards. So could we have also as a part of that condition that new documentation be submitted to staff to make sure that we know exactly what they're going to do in regards to the site plan, and then also something in regards to the screening or the removal of the bollards?
Yes, and we discussed that with them as well, that they need to submit some additional information.
The other so the motion will be staff findings with those conditions and the condition that they resubmit information.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Motion made by Mary Jo Meacham, seconded by Klaus Ryman Phillip. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's been approved.
HPCA 19-104 at 521 Northwest 27th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Lauren Workentine, LMW Real Estate LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to number 4, install railing at front porch, elective.
Okay, is the applicant present? No. Comments from commissioners? It looks like staff has recommended a continuance. Doesn't feel that the existing railing is historic, and adding more railing to match the non-historic railing would not be appropriate.
What, are we asking them to take, so basically we're asking them to take that off and bring a new design to the, I know they don't
can't ask them to
take it off, but I
remove.
think you'd build it if you had two different colors there.
Right.
So.
I think they wanted to put additional railing around the rest of the porch, and they were going to match that existing railing, but based on the way it's constructed and installed, staff does not believe that to be the original or the historic condition.
If they bring a new one, can you?
Unfortunately, the guidelines don't allow staff to approve features on porches that we don't have historic documentation for. So that would have to come back to the commission.
Okay. So we can move to continue this, and you'll contact that owner?
Yep. I would say, because of turnaround time, let's do October 2nd so that we have time to reach them.
I make a motion to continue HPCA 19-00104 to the October 2nd meeting.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Mary Jo Meacham, seconded by Taylor Fudge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That has been continued. Now we'll move on to other business.
BOA 14624 at 1429 Northwest 38th Street, HP Ward 2. Request for I'm not sure why it says HP, it's Putnam Heights. Request for recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission regarding an application for a special exception to the use in the Historic Preservation District to allow home sharing within Putnam Heights Historic Preservation District. As you all may recall, several months ago, starting late last year, the city developed and adopted a new ordinance to create a definition within the municipal code for home sharing and to establish some regulations for where it was allowed and what process a property owner had to go through in order to establish home sharing. One of the requirements that was established for that ordinance was that any home sharing application in a historic preservation district had to get a special exception, whether it was owner-occupied or not. This is the first one of these to go through since that ordinance came into effect, so it's the first one that this Historic Preservation Commission has seen. We have seen special exceptions for other things. Previously, we've seen applications for variances and PUDs and SPUDs and other kind of zoning cases that the commission weighs in on and provides a recommendation on. So this body's recommendation is not binding, but it will be forwarded to the Board of Adjustment for their consideration.
So, Katie, every time a homeowner would like to list their home on a home share, Airbnb, VRBO, whichever, that they have to come to us to get a special exception or recommendation?
Get a recommendation.
Okay, I understand. Okay. I know we've received a lot of comments on this, both for and against. Is the homeowner present? Okay, please state your name and give your address, and if you'd care to make some comments.
Yes, I would like to make some comments. Do I need to sign my name here, is that right?
Sign your name and put your address there, please. And then also state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Blake Gatewood, and I live at 1429 Northwest 38th Street in Putnam Heights. I live there with my wife and twin boys who are 10 months old, and we're here to request a special exemption or a recommendation for a special exemption to the Board of Adjustment. So kind of to explain exactly what we're doing, my home, which is in this picture, I don't know if you guys have it in front of you or not, but my home was originally built as a duplex. So if you can see in that picture on the door to the left, that's where we're proposing to use a small portion of our home as an Airbnb. If you walk into that door, there's a small living room and a small bedroom where there's also a bathroom and a laundry room connected. We also plan to put a small kitchenette or kind of coffee bar there for guests to use. And right now it is currently connected to the main house. There are 2 just normal sized doorways right now going into the main house. Regardless of what happens with this, we plan to close one of those off just to kind of make it more of a functional room. It's kind of an awkward layout because it was a multi-family house converted to a single-family house. It's kind of posed this unique arrangement that allows us to do this without altering anything on the exterior of the home. So that's the plan. And for the other doorway, we plan to do double doors where they could be locked from either way so that we could close it off whenever we're using it as an Airbnb, or we can open it up when we have families in town staying there. So I really believe that this board should recommend that this be allowed for 3 reasons. And the first reason is because what we are proposing does not have an adverse effect on the historic character of this home or the neighborhood, because we are utilizing this home as it exists today. We are not making any alterations to it. We are not changing the architecture of it. We are not proposing any construction added to this home. Secondly, it's just the scale of what we are doing. It has 1 bed in it. It will sleep 1 to 2 people. Our hope is to catch people who are coming in town for business or coming to visit family, a single person or a couple. And so I think that will really take care of a lot of the concerns that people may have. Is just the scale is relatively small compared to what other people might be doing with home sharing. And lastly, the reason I believe that this should be recommended is because the home sharing ordinances, which were passed just recently, were specifically addressed, well, there was a portion of it that separately and specifically addresses historic preservation. So there are laws that apply to people who are, like me, living in a historic home and trying to do this. And under those laws, it requires us to, 1, it to be our primary residence, and 2, be home while it's being rented out. And our family plans to do both of those things. And I believe that that also takes care of a lot of the current concerns that you'll hear, because, like I said, I have 2 twin boys and my wife. We plan on having a growing family as well, and we are not going to invite any tenants into our home that I feel like puts our family in danger. And we are excited to host people as a family. I think the type of tenants that we're going to be bringing in, the type of concerns that neighbors may have, will be addressed because I am right there hands-on with my family, even more concerned about what is happening under my own roof. So with that, I would humbly request that you would recommend this. And I would like to reserve any time for rebuttal if that's available.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gatewood. Anyone else here to speak in favor of this recommendation? Okay. Go ahead and step up. And if you'd please state your name and address and also sign in.
I will. My name is Taylor Henderson. I live at 1626 Northwest 38th Street, also in Putnam Heights, and down the street from Mr. Gatewood. And this wasn't mentioned in his address to you, but last week our neighborhood held a meeting in order that the neighbors could voice their concerns and there could be a discussion between Mr. Gatewood and any of us in support or opposition to his application. And as Ms. Friddle, you mentioned, over the past year, both this commission and the city has heard a lot of opposition and support for home sharing. And all of those same concerns were expressed at our meeting, and I just wanted to suggest that Any of the arguments being made against the application are mere conjecture of what will happen. And I wanted to offer some evidence that I could come up with that maybe that won't be what happens. So you may not be aware that we have an Airbnb in our neighborhood already. It came into place prior to the rules that are in place now, so this home doesn't require to have a special exemption. As best I can tell, it started operating in December of 2018, and I believe it has approximately 80 reviews posted at this point. And one of the arguments is that our home values are going to tank because Airbnb has moved into the neighborhood. And so I certainly by no means have had an appraiser come and look at my home, but I looked at both Redfin and Zillow from December of 18 when I can tell that this Airbnb came into our neighborhood until now. And by those figures, my home value has increased 5.31% and 9.3% respectively. So I would suggest any arguments about our home value decreasing may not exactly be the case. Obviously, other arguments go to the parking issues, and I walk my dog in our neighborhood almost nightly, and I have seen Airbnb guests or tenants at this home being dropped off via Uber or some other rideshare group. And so I would suggest there's not always going to be an extra car on the street. Although I will admit, at sometimes I have seen that extra car on the street, but it's not always, so I don't think we can rely on that to say there will always be extra cars. I would also suggest that this idea that bad things are going to happen with Airbnb tenants in our neighborhood may certainly not be the case, because it's my interpretation that not many of our neighbors knew that there was already an Airbnb operating in our neighborhood. And we pretty quickly know when something bad is going on in the neighborhood. And if we haven't heard about it yet, over these past 9 months, it suggests that it's not doom and gloom as soon as another Airbnb moves in. And that's all I have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in favor that has any new information? If you'll state your name and your address and also sign in.
Candace Bates, 1516 Northwest 36th Street. I also live in Putnam Heights. I just wanted to add that I personally use Airbnb a lot. I use it for business travel. When I use it for business travel, we don't bring a car, we Uber. And we typically pick neighborhoods like this versus staying at just a sterile Sheridan, because we want the experience of living in a historic neighborhood, or what it's like in different historic neighborhoods in different parts of the country. And so I personally think we have a beautiful neighborhood and potentially have the opportunity to kind of showcase some of those to our visitors. I also live directly next door to the Airbnb, and of the 86 reviews, I never know that anyone's ever there. So, and then last, this is based on reviews, and I think that it's based on him having positive reviews. He's only going to get guests, and so I think he has a better chance of potentially upkeeping our neighborhood than some of our other neighbors who don't paint their houses or don't mow their lawns. So I think that some of that could potentially be unfounded, that it's just going to tank. He's going to be an active homeowner in our community, and I'll be brief. And
thank you.
Hi, my name is Josiah Daniel. I live at 1609 Northwest 38th Street, same side of the street, block to the west of the subject property. A couple things I just think are important to mention in this situation. First of all, it's wonderful to have the Gatewoods in our neighborhood. This house was vacant for many, many years. and to have a family raising children in our neighborhood is a wonderful thing. An important thing to note in that regard is that there's broader things going on in our community right now. For example, our local elementary school, Putnam Heights Elementary, was recently the Seaworth Academy has been moved to our local elementary school. And unfortunately, whereas in past years many of our neighbors have sought to put together school supply drives for the local school, the response when Seaworth came to the neighborhood was, how are you going to keep us safe from these black and brown kids? What are we going to do? Our neighborhood's going to go to hell. This is all fear. It's all pure fear. And what's going on right now with this home sharing situation is the exact same thing. It's the exact same sort of not in my backyard. Perfect example, one of my neighbors submitted a letter to you. And I'll quote, "Part of ensuring that this is a safe neighborhood for my family is knowing who does and who does not belong here." That's wrong. That's just wrong. And ultimately what we really need to deal with is the fact that if you look at the house directly to the west of this house, it was purchased in 2004 for a little over $150,000. The home just to the right was purchased in 2000 for around $75,000. Now, Mr. Gatewood has expended more than $300,000 and had to put in an additional $30,000 to make this home even livable. What we have here are a situation where what I don't want to see happen, what I urge you to be careful about, is a situation where these home sharing rules are used to somehow limit, to use almost, to obfuscate what the real purpose is, which is to keep historic preservation neighborhoods for the elite and the wealthy, not for the common man. And I don't want to live in that type of neighborhood. That's not who we are. We need to overcome these irrational fears. Like my neighbors, I also use Airbnb regularly when I travel, when I go to Boulder, Colorado, or Portland, Oregon, or many other places I travel quite frequently for work. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the type of people that use Airbnb. There's a really nasty stigma that's been assigned to it, and I would just really urge you to consider that as neighborhoods change, that those of us who are working today and looking for affordable housing in the middle of our city, near jobs, also deserve to live in historic neighborhoods, not just those that have been there the longest or have the most resources to be able to do so. Thank you very much.
Is it Mr. Daniel? Josiah? Was your last name Daniel?
Yes.
Okay, if you would please sign in there. All right. Are you in favor of or against? In favor. Okay, thank you.
Miles Mixon, 515 Northwest 42nd. I just want to state a few of my opinions of the matter. I have used Airbnb frequently, and one thing I've noticed is most of the houses are meticulous inside and out when I go to stay at them. The only way they're going to be sustainable as home shares is if that is, the houses are kept up. On 42nd Street right now, you come off of Western, you go east in Crown Heights, and there are a lot of rentals. Those are the houses that I see where more cars are parked out in the street and where more deferred maintenance, no flower beds, no yard maintenance, no painting, no window glazing, gutters full, need roofs. And so, and I also used to live in Belle Isle where I had an Airbnb that was 3 houses down from me. That house was always maintained, never really had any problems that I know of. Now I hear that, have these ones, they have big parties, they have that. Well, I don't think that's going to be happening at Mr. Gatewood's house if he has 2 10-month-old twins at home. I also think that, there's also, there's a financial, benefit for Mr. Gatewood, which I imagine that the majority of that money coming in is probably going to help, continue to update his home inside and out. And then I also have a real estate license, and one of the things I've noticed over the years going in and out of houses, whether it's Gatewood, wherever, I mean, I've been through several houses that were either had garage apartments or were, a lot more just garage apartments. But one thing I did notice is a lot of those houses were kept up, where I've been through a lot of rental houses that are on the market, and those are usually what I call investor homes. And they're usually that because they've had so much deferred maintenance over the years. I don't think that, and I don't see that, you know, we're going to have 50% of people living in historic preservation neighborhoods going and jumping in and saying, I'm going to put my house up on Airbnb, or I'm going to start renting out a guest room. I don't think that's something. I don't think we're setting a precedence here that, you know, overnight, tomorrow, we're going to have, 50 new applicants coming in here next month wanting to put their house up on Airbnb. So,
All right.
that's it. Thanks.
You'll sign in, please. Okay, anyone else that would like to speak in favor of? We want to give equal time. We have received a lot of letters, both for and against, so if you'd like to come on up, and if there's anyone against this that would like to speak. And if you would please state your name and address, and then sign in whenever you...
My name is Yolanda Post, and I live right next door to this beautiful house on the west side. And I was discussed in one of the people that were for this deal as a cheap house, I think, or expensive house. I forgot what it was, but he lived there since 2004. Well, esteemed members of the Historic Preservation Commission, I hope that you really enjoy those houses. I want to keep it as beautiful as this one looks here. My name is Yolanda Post. I'm my husband, Jan Post, and we live in this neighborhood. My address is 1435 Northwest 38th Street, and we are retired educators. We love the beautiful historic homes in this neighborhood, and it is a very quiet neighborhood as well, of 100 houses more or less. The great attraction of an historic neighborhood is that it is free of commercial activities. And we consider home sharing a commercial activity. And since this house is a big house, you can see that, it could contain a lot of commercial activity in the end. So it will change the intimate character of our beloved neighborhood. And what I also want to mention is the three speakers who lived apparently in our neighborhood. I never met them. We do a lot together in our neighborhood. We know each other. But those three speakers, they never showed up at meetings. They never helped us out with the gardening part of the commons that we have. So we don't know him. I don't know them. Recently, Mr. and Mrs. Gatewood, they acquired this large, beautiful house a few months ago. And it is a big house. It has 6 bedrooms upstairs and 2 bathrooms. And downstairs it has a huge living room and dining room, a big kitchen, a bathroom, and a laundry room, and another bedroom. And of course it has a basement. So immediately after they acquired this house, they requested this special exception to allow home sharing. And if granted, that means that for 10 years, this exception will be valid and it will stay with the house if it is sold. Their application, if you look at their application, it's very vague and very ambiguous. We don't know how many units they are going to create in this house. Now, today, he talked about 1 unit that he wants to put in there. But we have no idea, because if he gets this special exception, he can put in as many units as he wants to. So maybe for the first 2 years, he will put in 1 unit, because it is expensive, of course. But afterwards, there are 6 doors on this house, so he can put 6 units in this house. In 1 unit, he has to live himself, of course. But the other 5 units, he can chop up that house, that beautiful house, in an historical neighborhood, and he can put lock boxes on those units, and we cannot defend our neighborhood anymore.
Can I ask you to pause for just one moment, just for clarification and so that I understand? Tell us, Katie or Rita, with the home sharing, with the special exception, if they get a permit for 1 unit, can they then build 4, 5, 10, 15? Can they divide up their homes? I don't know.
They don't get a permit for 1 unit, they get a permit to do this.
Okay. Rita, do you know?
In the ordinance that's attached to your staff report, on page 4 of 5, when it talks about conditions, paragraph F, conditions, it says, site plan must be followed. All uses approved by a special exception shall commence and be maintained in accordance with the approved site plan. And then at paragraph 2, it says, whenever staff finds that any proposed construction or occupancy does not, in its opinion, substantially comply with the terms of the special exception, it shall refer the question to the Board of Adjustment for its review at a public hearing. And that paragraph is titled Failure to Comply.
Okay, so it sounds like that would not be the case, but I just wanted to understand before you moved on, so please.
Well, I don't think so. It is very vague. His application is so vague that we cannot trust this, what she is saying. This is not right, what she's saying. It just means that we don't know how many units there are going to be in this house, and we have to come back to you all the time instead of just, dealing with it yes or no. We want to know how many units are going to be approved in this house, and you have to say this. You have to tell us so many units are allowed in this house. You have to put it in writing, because he did not put it in writing how many units he's going to have to be there. So if there are many units in that house, then of course we will have parking problems and security problems and also fire safety problems, because of course this is a wooden house. It means that of course the fire department, if he creates units upstairs, then we have those nice iron stairs on the side of the house, of this beautiful house, because they will require that if he's going to rent out the second floor.
If he did any exterior modifications, it would still have to come here for us to approve.
Sure. Yes, it would.
If the applicant wanted to make any exterior modifications, it would still have to come back
including
to us.
Adding doors.
It means that he has to come back. We as neighborhood, we already put in thousands of dollars to keep that house a 1-unit building that it was over 60 years. For 60 years this was a 1-unit building and a family house. And we have to come all the time, we have to come back, whatever he does. So we might have fire escape on both sides of the house. We might have to come back for parking, because he can put, of course, concrete in that beautiful yard over there, because he needs parking. If he has so many units, he needs lots and lots of parking. So you can see that you, as helping to preserve us old houses, that you have to come and help us to do that. And you have to do that in writing to tell him exactly what he can and cannot do. And that is very important, otherwise we keep on fighting this over and over again. So that's my point. I expect the house has 6 doors, that in principle he can construct 5 units and has to live in 1 unit. and he put 6 lock boxes on that house. So there is no protection. He doesn't have to be there. He lives there, possibly, and he doesn't have to live there with his kids, but he could have at least 1 unit that he says that he will be there. But he doesn't have to be there at all. He can stay in Rome, he can go to Africa, and all those units can be occupied without security for us. So my conclusion is this could be a rooming house in our beautiful neighborhood. We could create not this only, but we have so many big houses. They will all leave, of course, when we get all this going. And we have plenty of rooming houses suddenly in this beautiful neighborhood. It will not happen right away, but it might happen over, within 10, 20 years, and we all will move out. The people who have money, we will move out. I was planning to stay there because I'm older and retired, and I love this quiet neighborhood. But I don't want to live there when I have to live there, with all those people who, don't care about the neighborhood. Another thing is, he is chopping up the beautiful living space. It is a gorgeous living space inside, open, very nice, very modern. But of course, he's going to chop it up when he puts 1 unit in, and then the next unit, and then the next unit. Over time, I'm talking about over time. I talked about the front yard that will be destroyed, the fire escapes, and of course, we can expect in this beautiful house wedding parties, funeral parties, fraternity parties until late at night. So we will have excessive noise in this house and in all the other houses where this is going to happen. So therefore, I hope that you will not allow this special exception, especially not in the vague way that it is defined as now. There is no hardship for him at all if he doesn't get it, because he just bought a house and he already saw dollars in his eyes, because he is an investor. He is not a person that really wants to live with us. It is very possible that in 2 years that he is leaving, that he maybe has an office in that 1 unit building, but he doesn't want his kids to grow up in a neighborhood where we have all this kind of rooming houses. I'm sure he doesn't want to, and he will have the money to do that, to leave our neighborhood.
Okay, give it any last comments. We need to move on to some other people.
So I hope that you will not recommend for our historical neighborhood this kind of development.
Okay, thank you. If you would please sign in and put your address there. Appreciate the comments. Okay, anyone else that would like to speak? Okay.
They have to sign in, and I'm a neighbor. Sorry? Oh, you're already there. Oh, I was here already. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. State your name and your address.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dane Leibart, and I reside at 1426 Northwest 38th Street, which is directly across the street from the applicant house. And I would like to say that myself and my wife urge you to recommend disapproval and adopt the comments put forth by Suzanne Broadbent at the end of her letter and send it on to the Board of Adjustment. So I've got about 7 or 8 reasons that I object to this. I think the first thing I'd like to say, that's what's wrong, is to somehow infer that not wanting Airbnb or shared housing in your neighborhood is racist. I think that's wrong. In addition to that, I don't think there's any question that if we agree to do shared housing in Putnam Heights, that it will increase traffic. And it will increase commercial traffic in what is not a commercial area. Number two, it will bring into this family neighborhood tourists and commercial travelers that are not intended for this neighborhood. Number three, my wife and I have lived in our home in the neighborhood for over a decade, and it has always been a pleasant and stable family neighborhood. As I sat and watched the proceedings that took place this afternoon, I was really struck by what it takes for the commission and the community to come together and deal with the minutia of the bricks and the windows and the sidings and the dormers and new construction. It's a daunting task to create these beautiful and wonderful historic neighborhoods. And it's due to this kind of diligence and this kind of interaction that we have a Putnam Heights, which I've lived in for 10 years, and I love Putnam Heights. It's a gorgeous, quiet, beautiful, well-maintained neighborhood, and I want it to stay that way. The application should be denied to protect all the residents of Putnam Heights against the profit motives of one resident. And when discussing this with the applicant, he's got a rather large extended family. I think 9 siblings between he and his wife. And of course they can come and stay in his 3,000 square foot house. Of course his friends can come and stay in his home. There's no issue with that. What's at issue is somebody going to make profit off of these kinds of proceedings that we do today to protect those neighborhoods, because they are beautiful and people will probably want to stay there. And 5, we need to look no further than our neighbors a couple miles north in Nichols Hills in the Village, who've outlawed shared housing because they tried it and it was a failure. There were too many community complaints, there were problems, and it is not arguable that Airbnbs don't create problems, because they do. If you do a quick search of the internet, that happens. And with the meticulous care and the hours that we put into protecting our neighborhood, is this something that we want to do? Is there a need for more commercial space? I don't think so. Across the street from this house and my house, across Classen, they're restoring a beautiful old historic hotel, which will have 32 rooms in it. So there's no commercial need. And actually, I think it's going to be beautiful. It'll be an addition to the community, but it's going to bring a ton of additional traffic to 30A Street, which, if we begin to allow Airbnbs, will increase over time. I think one of the issues that Yolanda was referring to is enforcement. I live across the street, and I still can't figure out which are the owner's cars and which are visitors' cars. And usually when people move into the neighborhood, I can tell. It's just there's so many cars coming and going from friends, relatives. I don't know which cars belong and which don't, and it doesn't feel as safe as it used to. And I had no history of Airbnbs or even understanding them, but what I've seen is an increase in traffic just due to the family members, and that's perfectly okay. It has every right to do that. But I do not believe that owners have the right to make a profit off of this work that we do right here. And I believe that your jobs are volunteer jobs as well, that they're non-paid positions. So you give this to the community. And I think we take a huge risk. So to kind of sum things up, I believe what's at heart here is the idea, if we are going to allow shared housing in the community, I think that's what the ordinance is set up, by sending this to you, the commission, for a recommendation. Are we going to allow houses or residents to make a profit off of their home in a historic district? And if we do one, there will be more. There is tons of money to be made in this business. I was thinking about, oh my God, I've got 2 extra bedrooms upstairs. I could probably rent those out. And figuring out with the average cost of about $75 a night, I could probably do at 50% occupancy about $30,000 a year. That's not chump change. That can pay the mortgage easily. So what I'm saying is there is a huge, huge profit motive to be made off of the work that we're doing here in keeping our neighborhoods protected. This is a fight for the heart and soul of our historic district. And we rely on you as you protect us in terms of what the houses look like, to protect us from a whole new use of our historic districts, commercial use. So again, I urge disapproval of the exception, and we have a beautiful neighborhood. Why? Why do it? What good does it do us? He can still have his family and friends over. So I want to thank you and hope that you, again, disapprove this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else that would like to speak? If you'll state your name and sign in.
Greetings. Thank you for your volunteer service to the community. I don't know how you do it. I do not know how you do it. My name is Ed Crane. I live at 1432 Northwest 38th Street, so directly across, a little bit to the west. I've lived in Putnam Heights for 16 years, so I won't revisit all of the notes that I sent to Katie a few days ago, but I'm trying to take this from kind of a macro perspective, or the longer view, and maybe that's based on the fact that I've been so involved in the neighborhood until just recent years, actually. I am not on the board currently. The issues that I think we have to face on this particular stretch of street, please help me with this. We're 1 block west of Classen. We've had significant parking issues over the last several years, to the point that we had 25 non-resident cars parked on our street by a firm at 39th and Classen that has since left, but the building's being renovated. So we had issues. We came to the city. They were great. We were getting ready to put up signs on our street that said no parking. We weren't even going to be able to park on our street. That was the only solution to getting non-resident parking off of our street 5 days a week, 7 to 6 at night is when these folks were there. So we had to be vigilant, and I think some of our neighbors who didn't live here at the time don't realize what that's like. So that's a possibility, more on-street parking. Anything can create more on-street parking. But as you know better than I, we have very narrow driveways. We don't have circular drives and all of the things that would help if you had additional traffic, particularly commercial traffic. I think, too, so it's on-street parking and traffic, because we're already a pass-through neighborhood. I think it's the general reduction in the quality of life, which I know is somewhat intangible. As a dog walker and someone who's been involved in the neighborhood for a long time, you feel like you kind of know who's where they are. And many of us have been through crime sprees in that neighborhood, where it was very helpful to know. If you look on nextdoor.com, for example, you know what's going on in all the neighborhoods, and people are being very vigilant about it. But it's hard to be vigilant if you have lots of people coming into the neighborhood and renting, because you don't know who a renter from an owner at that point. So as a past president of the association, I've dealt with a lot of the issues that all neighborhood leaders face, and my views are framed by years of dealing with some significant quality of life issues experienced on Northwest 38th Street and in the neighborhood, including non-resident on-street parking, which has been somewhat resolved at this point in time. But we're being vigilant because we know the Bradford is opening soon at the corner. We think it'll be lovely. But there's also a limitation to the parking that those folks have, in that particular facility as we understand it. And we studied it years ago when they came to actually Suzanne Broadbent's home and explained what they were going to do. So we were in on it from the very beginning to try to understand and try to work with them on that. We also have a commercial building under renovation at 39th and Classen, and that was the one that caused us so much trouble. And they were the ones who had employees parking on 37th, 38th, and 40th streets every day of the week. So we're trying to be vigilant with that. We've also had our share of home and car burglary issues over the years, some of them dating back to 2003 and 4 when I first moved there. And the OKC Police Department told us repeatedly that as homeowners, we had to police our own. They didn't have the resources to do it, and they still don't. So the onus is on us to spend more time than usual calling 911. And everybody's getting used to that. And I think that those who haven't experienced the crime issues in the past don't understand the challenges of trying to stay up with your neighbors and who is supposed to be there, which is not a racial term. And I think that what's important is that we have a very, very pass-through neighborhood. We have a lot of kids going to Boys and Girls Club. We have an elementary school that's under transition. We're off Classen, we're off 36. We have a lot of people coming and going, and we have a pretty good feel for who's there and who shouldn't be there at any given time of the week. The case you're considering today has huge implications, as we already know. I think once you open the door, though, to home sharing in the neighborhoods, it obviously is going to be very appealing to a number of people, and it might be to me at some point in time, not where I live currently, but if I were to choose another neighborhood, it might be. We have 104 homes. We're the smallest of the preservation areas. What if just a quarter of our neighbors decided to do that? Just a quarter. Crown Heights has 600 homes. I don't know what the other HP neighborhoods have. But you just think about, once you open that door and you have a significant number of people doing it, you're going to increase parking and traffic. There's no way around that. Private security is an issue that we've looked at as a neighborhood, and we couldn't afford it. We couldn't do it. I was talking with the Edgemere folks the other night about how much they pay to have security in their neighborhood. And I know what Crown Heights has done in the past. I'm not speaking on their behalf. I know what Heritage Hills has done in the past. But the more that you increase the volume of people in the neighborhood, the more opportunities there are for any kind of crime opportunities. So I hope that you will decline this special exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? No one else? Okay, Mr. Gatewood, would you like a moment?
Very briefly. Do you guys have any questions specifically to me before I make a brief comment?
Questions?
Do we have time to comment now, or do we want to wait till after Mr. Gatewood speaks?
Since he's addressing issues, I would just ask maybe for clarification on, does the application include how many units? Is that a part of the application?
I believe it is. I don't know for certain, but it's all going through the Board of Adjustment. So they have to approve something specifically, and if I do something different from what they approve, then that's a violation, and I can get my license revoked.
I think staff has a...
Cameron Conyers, I'm staff at Oklahoma City. I will say I was trying to dig up the exact case. Board of Adjustment has made comments like, if you say you're going to have one room, it's mandatory, and if a neighbor, so it's nice with Airbnb, you can see your neighbor is going to give out one room. So if there is discrepancy between what they say they're going to do, then that becomes something enforceable. I just wanted to address that, and I'll find the specific case, the Board of Adjustment. They also can change the year amount, so if it's like the usual exception is 10 years, I believe they want, the one they approved was maybe just 1 to 2 to 5 years, something like that. So I know they do have provisions to adjust that, and I'll find the exact case and I'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
To confirm that, I know that they can approve a special exception for home sharing for up to 10 years. but they have in many cases been limiting it to 5 years and even in some cases 1 or 2 years, particularly if it was in an area where there were a lot of concerns so that they could kind of monitor how that's operating. I believe there's also a limit within the home sharing ordinance there's a cap on the number of rooms, and beyond that number of rooms, it does become a truly commercial, hotel entity. I thought it was up to 5 rooms, but I won't swear to that. But that is within the ordinance itself.
But to be clear, if you say you're going to do 1 and that's what, should be approved, if that's approved and it goes to Board of Adjustment, if you then split it up into 2, that would be enforceable as a violation. Right, so essentially we could, depending on what your intention is, which it sounds like just 1 unit on one side, could we add that as a condition essentially to where if we make a recommendation, we say with condition that it's 1 unit?
Well, but it's like number of rooms too. I mean, you're going to have.
Well, I think if it's whatever you're leasing out as one entity. So I don't think it's necessarily rooms. I think it's what are you leasing out on Airbnb as one entity. I mean, you're not going to have 3 different Airbnb strangers living in 1 unit, even if it has 3 bedrooms necessarily. Does that make sense?
Well, for the neighborhood, in terms of the volume of people in the house, I do think that if you have 5 rooms and you say you're going to rent it to 1 person, that I'm not sure that works either. And they're concerned that you'd have a fraternity in there. So I think if Mr. Gatewood made those parameters precise, then maybe the neighborhood would start feeling a little more secure.
I mean,
I don't think it'd be.
Could you just clarify what you described originally? You said it has a living area.
Yeah. So you walk in this front door on the left. There's a small living area, and then a bedroom in the back. It's kind of an open concept, but a living room, bedroom, bathroom, and a small little laundry room attached to the bathroom. So there'll be 1 bed in the unit, and I think I'll put a couch in the living room.
Based on the letters we've received and those in opposition today, I really don't think that the neighbors that oppose it are going to be okay if you do 1 or if you do 10. So, I mean, I don't even think we need to.
I just wondered for clarification because that was a question, I think. Did people know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how I felt from the neighbors. So, do you want to go ahead and you had some comments?
Sure. There's kind of 2 main, arguments against that I've heard. One of which is traffic is one of the main concerns. And the other is kind of relating more to the character of the neighborhood, I would say. I'm not sure if it's very clearly defined. And I've thought about this a lot over the last 2 days as I've reviewed the packet, and I really appreciate that we get the comments a few days before, because that allows us a chance to kind of digest, hear what the arguments are, pro and con. And so I kind of typed out my thoughts on both because I want to be coherent in how I respond to this. So I'll just read this first section that relates to traffic. And when we talk about historic neighborhoods or traditional neighborhoods, what comes to my mind is communities where there's a wide range of housing typology: single family, multifamily, live work, light commercial, including restaurants, retail, fabrication, light fabrication, that kind of thing. This is partly a result of historic and older neighborhoods developing before the advent of widespread car ownership, and the need to be near work, shopping, recreation, and the advent of Euclidean zoning in the U.S. around the 30s, and really taking the form it has today in the 50s in Oklahoma City, when those neighborhoods were developed. The Euclidean zoning changed the traditional historic neighborhood configuration by separating geographic areas into a city, its separate use, single-family, multifamily, commercial, and changing the way the city develops, and only possible because widespread car ownership allowed people to cover larger distances and get to places they need to be in their daily lives. And I mentioned that, I know that's kind of long-winded, but this idea of protecting the neighborhood as single-family, in a sense, is counterintuitive to the traffic argument, because if you had a neighborhood that was developed in such a way that you could walk to the corner store, you could walk to work, we wouldn't need to get into a car for every single trip. So to me, adding density, which in turn, in my opinion, helps support local businesses, helps support local places of work, in the larger scheme of things, could reduce the traffic. Now, I realize that's kind of a big picture, and that's not applicable to this case. As it applies to this case, this house was originally built as a duplex, according to Sanborn maps. It was always 2 units. What the applicant is proposing to me, I can't imagine it adding a significant amount of parking issues. And specific as this relates to this case, we're going to have to review every case that comes here. So as conditions change, that's something that we address. I can't imagine this case being a concern. And another topic that I think is kind of interesting, the street is a public resource. It's a place for everybody. And to say that, I don't know who those people are parking there, or, to me, you have your parking space, and it's next to your house, it's in a garage, it's behind your house, wherever it is. I don't think you can claim spaces that are yours, or, if this street was parked, then the Airbnb person would have to find a different place to park anyways. Or, because they're traveling, there's a good chance, in my opinion, that I think as some other commenters said, they might be coming by an Uber or a different kind of, or a taxi, whatever. So I'm not sure I totally buy the parking and traffic argument. At the same point, Ed Crane, I believe this is a comment that you made in your response. You make a point to protest that the neighborhood does not abut commercial businesses on Classen and is not within easy walking distance from restaurants and retail. And I'm on Classen all the time. I live in Jefferson Park, so I'm kind of in the area quite a bit. And actually, I printed off a map of Classen, and I forgot to bring it, but just within a few blocks of Putnam Heights, you've got Jeff's Country Cafe, Cafe Cacao, Neptune Sandwiches, Funk's Kitchen, Red Cup, Lee's Sandwiches, Subway. There's a super rich kind of diversity of restaurants and businesses that visitors would want to visit if they were staying in Putnam Heights, which would not require driving. So I think there are a lot of alternatives to driving. I get the idea of it being a pass-through neighborhood, people driving through, is it 39th or 36th? I drive through the neighborhood quite a bit to go east and west. And I understand people drive fast, maybe it's a dangerous street, and that's something, to me, that's a whole separate argument. If you're staying in the neighborhood, you're not driving through the neighborhood, you're staying in the neighborhood, so you're not going to be zooming through the neighborhood. That's something that I think needs to be addressed with Public Works, in a sense. So that was my comment regarding traffic. My other comment, kind of regarding some comments on the character of the neighborhood, is that if this opposition was just about Airbnb ordinance, that would be one thing. But there's a case in 2011 in which the neighborhood hired legal representation to find an owner who wanted to restore the house to its historical configuration as a duplex. And that, to me, suggests that some residents of the neighborhood aren't interested in historical accuracy, just opposing this case. I'm sorry, this is kind of emotional, kind of near and dear to my heart. But maintaining the status quo that was established somewhere in the 40s and the 50s. And the issue I have with this is that this completely dismisses how traditional neighborhoods and cities were developed, which had diverse housing options allowing people from completely different backgrounds to live in the same geographic area. This started changing when the neighborhoods began to be separated by race and class. Euclidean zoning helped hasten the class divide by specifying minimum lot sizes, in some cases house sizes, making it economically not feasible for people who couldn't afford a certain down payment or upkeep cost to live in that neighborhood or geographical area, creating an invisible barrier to entry into that neighborhood. Racial separation was far more explicit, with race requirements being written into zoning law or neighborhood ordinances. In Oklahoma City in 1934, OKC City Council approved a segregation zone, separating whites and people of color into no trespass zones. Ultimately, this didn't last long, as the Oklahoma Supreme Court overturned this ordinance in 1935, since the Supreme Court had declared such ordinances unconstitutional in 1917. Now, I'm not saying that you're racist, But I'm saying that you're speaking from, but I'm saying that you're speaking from a position of privilege, is what I'm saying. You're speaking from a position of privilege, is all I'm saying.
This is emotional for both sides, as has been evidenced today. I would like to hear from other commissioners at this point.
I can make it hard to talk. This is one of these difficult and thought-provoking situations where I think the commissioners, we all spend a lot of time, unpaid time, doing this. If you've sat through today, it's like this every month. It's difficult. We try to be fair, but we have an overall mission. And to me, this particular situation is also about preserving the historic neighborhood. And everything that Klaus talked about, most of those things are controlled by other entities, the police department, code enforcement, and so forth. I mean, the streets are everybody's streets, and anybody can park on them. If there's parking problems, you need to call. If there's party problems, you need to call the police. So we can't control those. I feel like our mission is the overall is to continue enhancing the historic districts and to continue preserving their integrity. And we have this ordinance in Oklahoma City that allows people to home share. We have this interesting addition that it's going to come through the HP Commission if it's in a historic district. My question is, how is the historic district different than the house across the street? Why can that person over there house share, and why are we in a situation where we can preserve, where we don't have to allow that in our neighborhood? That is uncomfortable for me. Unless specifically a case came before us and we said, it's too little, it's too small, there's this, there's that. If there was a unique circumstance that the neighborhood or neighbors or that we saw would really, that home share application would affect the workings of the neighborhood or the character, or they were asking for additional changes or something, I can understand where we could step in. But in all fairness to all people, in my opinion, we have this rule in Oklahoma City, and yes, it has to go through this special process for historic districts as a recommendation, because we are not the final word here. I don't see that there's a unique circumstance here that would allow us to not recommend it. I always go back, when I have a big problem deciding on what to do, I say, if I had to go to district court and plead this case, I'm not an attorney, I'm a kitchen designer. If I had to go plead the case and say, this is why they should not be allowed, what is the unique circumstance for this gentleman's problem? I don't see just living in a historic district and having neighbors not think that there's going to be all these imagined problems. I don't see it. I don't think I could defend it. And if I can't defend it, then I feel like I have to forward the recommendation that, however we do it. It's a little confusing, but I would recommend that we go forward, that it would go forward, the application would go forward. I do think that we could put some stipulations on it, possibly. In some regards, I don't know why we would do that to this, but because it comes, because it's coming through historic districts, maybe we try to, use you as a guinea pig and say, hey, we're going to give a limited time period, maybe be more specific. That way, if there are problems, then maybe that can be reviewed. But That's kind of my opinion. I would say, and I have to admit, I just spent last evening booking 14 days of Airbnb from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. I have stayed in them all over the United States, Detroit, Indianapolis. Just got back from Austin, Fort Worth. I've stayed in some interesting places, and because I'm cheap. But and I've stayed in some wonderful places too, when I wanted to spend more money. But I owned, from experience, turned a house across from OU, into a 4-unit bed and breakfast, and ran that and lived in it myself from 1990 until 2000. 10 years experience as a bed and breakfast owner. Never had one problem with people, weird people, doing anything. I never called the police. I was never afraid. I had strangers in my home from all over the world for 10 years. And so I think that there are some fears from not maybe experiencing it, but I just, everywhere we go, as an interested historic preservation neighborhood kind of person, we're always looking at where we go and what we're, and I just don't see the impact. I do not see the impact. When you're talking about it being multiplied, if you look up Airbnbs and you want to go to a certain neighborhood, I don't care where, you can see how many are in a neighborhood. They are few and far between. I mean, you want to go in one neighborhood, there might be 1 or 2. You want to go here, maybe there's 10 or 11 because it's bigger. There's not any, it's not been my experience from reviewing this, looking for places to stay, that once there's one, they multiply like I don't know what. That's not my experience. So I would say I just don't feel comfortable in not recommending this because I don't see the unique circumstance for this particular one, and because it's in a historic district, to not go forward. So.
Okay, thank you. Linda, you had some comments? Or do you still? Push your button if you do.
There's a really long process that many of your neighbors took part in with the city. It was really not so much about who was in the neighborhood or what the experience was going to be. It was more the vulnerability of historic preservation areas, as much as anything because of their location and the recent development. So I think it was to move slowly through these districts that are not the same as 123rd Street. They're not. They're not in the same proximity, nor are they as vulnerable to maybe overuse. There are considerations about Airbnb using up rental property. You know, everybody wants to have properties close to develop, vibrant areas of the city that everybody can afford. Well, if they're all Airbnb, that's not, that just sort of sucks it up. It's just bigger than a bread box. And this, there was a lot of thought that went into this ordinance, a lot of back and forth. People felt strongly, just like the people here do on both sides, with different experiences and really different things that they maybe feel that they value, depending on where they are at what time. But this is the ordinance that we got, is kind of the way that I look at it. And sort of collectively we reached this, and I don't know any more than anybody else if compromises are, there's the old definition, but it was not easy to get there, and it was people of goodwill and on both sides trying to balance interests and concerns. So for me, this application, I do think it's a little vague. And I'm sure the Board of Appeals will ask you to be more specific because they, as staff member said, they're going to want to have specific things that they approve for you in this. But to me, this application meets the definition that the ordinance, whether or not I agree or not, or whether, I think it meets the criteria set forth in the ordinance. I don't know what else you can ask someone to do except to rely on that. And the other is that it is city government is the closest thing to us, much closer, much more important than sometimes we think. And nothing is static. I mean, but to change this ordinance or to change the requirements just has to go to a different place. I mean, we really just have to make a determination if he's met those requirements. It is the way that I look at it. So.
Thank you, Linda. Taylor?
Yeah, I guess I tend to agree with, I think, everybody that's up here on the horseshoe. I think I would likely vote to approve. I haven't seen anything in the application that, tells me that it's incorrect or shouldn't be sent up to the Board of Adjustments. Would I want an Airbnb right next to my house? Probably not. But the ordinance allows it, allows for home sharing, assuming that you're falling under the guidelines, rules, and regulations. As long as you're not having, major, rock and roll parties at your house, that to me that would be a neighborhood issue for which people would call the police. And my guess is the home sharing would, the reviews and all of that would probably turn downhill quickly, and it wouldn't be a viable option for you. So, if you're going to do it legitimately and do it right, and make sure you're treating your neighbors with respect, and that your tenants are treating your neighbors with respect, to me, there's really not much that I could do or that I would say that would lead me to believe that we shouldn't approve this application to move forward. So I guess that's pretty much where I'm at.
Thank you, Taylor. Okay, I think we've been generous to listen to both sides, for and against, and I am ready to take a recommendation for approval or disapproval.
Were we adding any conditions, or we're just recommending approval, and if there's a unit issue, that's the Board of Adjustment?
I would think so.
Okay. I'll recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment for the special exemption request regarding Board of Adjustment case 14624 with the following comments as included in the staff recommendation.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, recommendation made by Klaus Herman Phillips, seconded by Taylor Fudge. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. We have two more items under other business quickly. I don't want to go too quickly because two of them are pretty cool. Actually, they're both cool. Not to take credit away from anybody. B. Lester House at 300 Northeast 3rd Street, Downtown Business District, Ward 7. Consideration and possible action to initiate a proposal for designation of the Lester House as a historic landmark, HL overlay. This is city zoning, HL overlay, not National Register of Historic Places, just to make sure that's clear. The Lester House is already listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We were contacted by the property owner, Kathy O'Connor, with Hpca, Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority. They recently closed on the property and would like to pursue designating the entire site, the main house, the mansion, as well as the smaller house to the east of it and the commercial property to the south as a historic landmark. If the commission chooses to initiate that today, we will prepare a staff report evaluating the property against the criteria for landmark designation, and that will come back to you for a recommendation and then go on to Planning Commission and City Council for their final vote. Couple of things to note. One, this also will have to get routed through Downtown Design Review Committee because it's within their district. The ordinance says that when a property is designated as a historic landmark within the Downtown Design Review area, it comes to us instead of DDRC. Obviously, any of the provisions for things like streetscape and sidewalks and parking and that kind of thing that are within the underlying zoning would still apply, but the design review would be through the HP Commission. And also, just because we've had some activity lately regarding our ordinance and our process for designation. Right now, there have been no changes to our ordinance. There's been an action initiated, but our ordinance is still in effect as it stands. Even if the proposed amendment to our ordinance had gone into effect, we do have the property owner's support, so this would still be permitted under the proposed changes to our ordinance. Tiny little bit of background on the house. As I said, it was listed on the National Register in 1982. It was originally constructed by Sidney Lyons and his wife, Mary Lyons. They developed and owned and operated the East India Toilet Goods and Manufacturing Company, which was a business that advertised in catalogs and sold beauty products marketed primarily to African American population all over the country. They were manufactured here in the building behind the house. Very successful business. He went on to own lots of property in the surrounding area and was a well-established businessman, very active in the community, and then was owned. So I think we might look at the name of the house and incorporate Lyons. I'm not sure why the National Register nomination just says Luster, since it was built by the father. Other than that, I mean, his stepson went on to do other things as well. But we'll have more information when this comes back to you again, and all about the history of the property. But it certainly appears to staff that this would potentially be eligible for landmark designation.
Okay. I know this is an important house with a significant history, and I love that listing it as a national landmark would protect it in perpetuity. So I'm really excited to explore this. Do we have a motion to initiate the process?
I make a motion to initiate the process for a proposal for the designation of the Luster House.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Motion initiated by Mary Jo Meacham, seconded by Klaus Ryman Phillip. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.
And our final item, we have a resolution for Commission member George Massey. He recently stepped down from the Commission for other commitments and time constraints and that sort of thing. He was near the end of his term on the Commission anyway, but he has served the Commission for a very long time and has been very active both during his time here with the Commission and in his other activities that he engages in. One of the most obvious was, for the last several years, he has worked with me and with Gigi Faulkner to teach a course for realtors where they get continuing education credits about HP, always trying to provide those educational opportunities for others about what it means to be in a historic district. And we just really appreciate his time and his service on the Commission. So I think we just need a motion and a second and a vote to pass that resolution.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass the resolution expressing our appreciation to George Massey for his service on the Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Linda Schultz, seconded by Mary Jo Meacham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Now on to communications and...
We'll zip through our other items. We have administrative approvals and some other administrative activities. You follow up with staff if you guys have questions on any of those. Nothing new to report from City Council. Board of Adjustment, we had a case that was to be heard August 1st, but there was a notice issue, so that will actually be heard August 15th. And then we have a second Board of Adjustment appeal that will also be heard August 15th. There have been some questions about whether the Commission should go, whether the Commission is expected to go. The guidance from the Municipal Counselor's Office has been that it's not really appropriate for any one Commission member to speak in an official capacity on behalf of the Commission, because you're only one voice, as we often say in our discussions. Some of these were not decided unanimously. You are welcome to attend any public meeting and speak on your own behalf at any time. Just be clear that you're representing your views and your opinions and not speaking on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission necessarily. Staff does always attend these, and we're there to respond to questions about the activity that happened at the Commission meeting, about the meaning of the guidelines and interpretations and that sort of thing. Any questions about either of those?
I'm sorry, I do have one quick question about that. And I'm not necessarily planning on attending one of those, but if we had some information, say we went and visited one of the houses because we're on the commission and saw the condition of the house, if we're speaking as a citizen, but that's maybe a unique experience that we had as a commissioner, how does that work, for presenting our findings?
When you speak independently as a commissioner, you're still able to say what you saw, even though you saw it as a commissioner. So you would say, I'm a commissioner, I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission. However, in that capacity, I went to 123 East Main Street, and this is what I saw.
Gotcha.
Well, that would be necessary because he wouldn't have any other reason to be at that property.
Well, because I'm not a stakeholder, I'm not next door or neighbor or something.
Right. So what were you doing looking?
All right, why were you?
How? So just by reason of explanation. But otherwise, no. Unless you were saying something like that, no.
Hey, Linda, push your button if you're talking, so we can keep it on the record.
I think Rita meant specifically if you're saying, I've been in the house.
Yes.
I looked around on the interior, da-da-da. If you're just a person off the street, it's like, well, how did you get in?
And that's,
as opposed to saying, I was a commissioner,
right.
I went on a site visit, I was, provided access.
But if you just had a comment, I'm Linda Schultz, I'm here to say this.
Right, my address is.
And you go.
Okay.
Commission?
So tomorrow at Planning Commission's Urban Development Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Planning Commission that reviews urban development, you'd think that would be everything they do. But it's not quite everything they do, but it's a lot of ordinance amendments and changes to zoning and things like that. This subcommittee tomorrow will be reviewing the proposed amendment to the HP ordinance that addresses the historic district designation process, and it is scheduled to be set for introduction at Planning Commission on the same day, tomorrow afternoon. Urban Development Committee has some discretion in whether or not they go ahead and set things for introduction, or if they say we really think we need more information. The Urban Development Committee meeting is an open public meeting, and it'll be in this City Council meeting room behind here, which is not their typical location, but that's where they'll be. I believe they're starting at noon tomorrow, and then Planning Commission will be in this room at 1:30.
Okay, looks like we had 2 National Register listings, Capitol Hill, Commercial District, and Stonegate. Nothing new on the ad hoc committee, I think?
Right.
Okay. Municipal Councilor, what have you to say? Nothing? Okay. Next meeting date is September 4th at 2 p.m. in this office, in this room. New applications were reviewed on August 6th. Next regularly scheduled workshop for the HP Commission is September 11 at 11:30 a.m.
Let me just note on that we are planning for that workshop to be kind of a final workshop review of the preservation plan. We're anticipating taking that through the review and adoption process. So hopefully everybody can keep that one on their calendars.
Nice.
September 11th. And before we go to items from commissioners, I'm going to embarrass Cameron. Just to say, since the last time you saw Cameron, he is no longer an intern. He is now a planning department employee. He has to be here 40 hours a week, and we won't let him leave.
I'm sorry.
But he's going to be splitting his time between HP support and support for the code update effort that is newly underway. So
congratulations.
Excited to have him here.
Okay. Items from commissioners? I think we've all said our piece today. No citizens to be heard. Let's adjourn.